Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Wednesday episode of The Hang Up right here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty. What am I hung up on this week? Well, a lot of stuff, but I'm going to give a quick rundown, and I'm going to try to get through my little rant here without losing all sports fans, all women, and taking so long that we don't get to spend much time with my guest, because we're probably going to end up having to stop the show around 8:30 today, which is, I mean, it's great for everybody. Leave him wanting more. Maybe you won't want any more. Who knows? Art and I were at a reptile expo this last weekend, and it went really well. We thought it was going to go poorly. As a matter of fact, Sunday morning, by the time Sunday morning had rolled around, we had sold, I think, one snake, and then Sunday afternoon got considerably better. And we had a great time there. We met a bunch of vendors, got to hang out, doing stuff. We're also doing reptile expos this weekend in Austin at the Pack in Leander, and next weekend in Shirts. You can look up both of those, but I'm not advertising those things. We thought we were going to get into Repticon in June. We booked based on a link, but after paying for the tables, they contacted us and said, hey, that you guys weren't supposed to have that link, so we're going to refund your tables and put you on the waiting list. So we're back on, or back on the waiting list. I'll talk to them more at another time, but looking forward to all that. I'm working on a bunch of projects for the Atheist Debates channel. That's my thing, my personal YouTube channel. You can go over and subscribe to it, patreon.com/atheist debates. And every month I put up 4 videos where I do debate reviews, piecing out different portions of the debates I've done, and other topics just based on what I feel like or what I'm studying and what I'd like to share. So there's a video coming up on a purported miracle healing, and a final review of the debate with Daniel, and a debate review of the debate with Than. And there's a new segment that I'm creating called, Beast Memes. And it is a look at internet memes. And that's what I'm hung up on today. So I love funny memes, but I tend to hate most of the ones that attempt to make an argument. You can say that it's because I'm a pedantic prick of a debater who wants to, rip things apart and find everything that's wrong with them and can't just run, with like a half-formed thought. But it's important because they represent who we are. And as one of the people who ends up having to go out and engage in debates and public discussions, the number of like just yesterday, somebody's response to a bad atheist argument was just to say, oh, well, that person must have spent a lot of time listening to so-and-so, and then just named, internet atheist person. And I get it. It's fine. It's an opinion, but it's not an argument. And if it's a bad argument, it's a bad argument. I spend as much more time correcting atheists of bad arguments as anybody. Bumper stickers aren't the beacons of thought that some people seem to think they are. It's difficult to get complex issues sorted in a bumper sticker or a little meme that you're going to post on Facebook. By all means, keep doing it. Today's meme, though, has nothing to do with atheism or philosophy. It's potentially important because this meme shows us how awful we are at spotting bad arguments when the underlying point is tied in our mind to something good and important. Something like pay equality or the inequity in pay, specifically the gender pay gap. I'm not a sports person, don't care that much about sports, never watched a WNBA game, never watched college basketball for more than a minute or so if I'm at Pluckers. Caitlin Clark, who I knew even before people were sharing this meme around, because she's one of, if not the best all-time women's college basketball players. She's phenomenal. Everybody knew she was going to go first in the WNBA draft, and she did on Monday. And when they announced her contract, people started losing their minds. And I had a little difficulty figuring out why, because we already knew exactly what her salary was going to be beforehand. Year 1, it's $76,000. Year 2, it's $78,000. Year 3, it's $85,000. And there's an optional 4th year at $97,000. By the way, that salary is set for the first pick, the second pick, the third pick, and the fourth pick. If you go in the top 4 of the draft, you are all going to be getting the same salary. But that's the WNBA salary. The meme compares Caitlin Clark's 4-year contract, which is $338,056, to the 2023 number 1 NBA draft pick, Victor Wembanyama, whose 4-year contract is worth $55 million. Caitlin Clark gets drafted first, 4 years, $338,000. Victor Wembanyama gets drafted first last year, 4 years, $55 million. And it's, he's paid too much, she's paid too little. Look at this pay inequity. Look at this. It's all terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, it's a terrible meme because it doesn't actually represent reality at all. First of all, while they are both playing basketball, they are not playing the same game. The facts and figures surrounding just the game, just the basketball game, is different. WNBA basketballs are smaller. The quarters are shorter. Their rosters are different. The number of games they play is dramatically different. I think the NBA plays something like 1,200 games, not counting postseason stuff. And I think the WNBA plays a couple hundred games. So like the NBA players play almost 1,000 more, which means more chances for revenue, more TV stuff, more ticket sales, and also more risk, more chances to get injured, be seeded out, and everything else. So there's a different risk and reward. Again, not a sports guy. Don't care about this. The NBA, the WNBA is not the point of this. But people are outraged at this difference in salary. And not just the massive difference, but the fact that Caitlyn's salary is seemingly pretty low. 2024, she's going to make $76,535. That doesn't seem like it's that much. I mean, not when you consider she's a college graduate. If she'd have, just gone out and worked in whatever field she was going in, she'd make more than $76,000 with a college degree, almost certainly. And yet, that's her salary. But it's a terrible argument because you're comparing apples to oranges, and not just because the games themselves are different, but because there are raw, serious differences in ticket prices, attendance, viewership, ratings, and most importantly, revenue. The NBA has revenue of $10 billion per year, or last year, I guess. The WNBA has revenue of $60 million. The NBA players have contracts that allow them to get, I think it's at least 50% of TV income, and there's like $2 billion that comes from the TV contracts. I'm not completely sure on how the contracts actually work, but the NBA makes a ton of money. And when you say that the NBA players are overpaid, then the first question is, where should that money go then? If we take it from the NBA players, who do we give it to? The owners? Because that's what we've already done, is take it from the owners and start distributing it to the NBA players so that they have a portion. They're getting, their pay is in some ways tied to the profits of the NBA. The WNBA, on the other hand, doesn't make a profit. May have lost $12 million last year. I don't think it's ever made a profit. And so what we have is a WNBA that brings in $60 million in revenue, but spends $72 million trying to stay afloat year after year after year after year. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm glad that they're able to do it, but Arden and I have a business that I talked about earlier. We breed exotic reptiles. Our business is not yet profitable, so we don't get money. It's bizarre to me that there's multiple industries in this world that don't make money, and yet people are getting paid decent money off of it. Now, don't worry about Caitlin Clark, because no matter what you think about her salary, I think the fact that she's making money off a business that's not making money is impressive. But Caitlin Clark's going to make millions in endorsements from Nike and stuff. Her NIL valuation is like $3 million. That's the name, identity, and likeness, or name, image, and likeness. And it's just basically, how marketable are you? And so when people are posting this meme saying, oh, isn't this outrageous? Because, hey, look, the women aren't getting paid as much as the men. Yes, but the women aren't playing the same game in the same, by the same rules, with the same viewers, with the NBA and the WNBA are more different than just the fact that there's an extra letter there. And if you want to know what the problem is, it's us. Well, probably not me or most of you, because I don't know that the NBA's ever made more than like $2 or $3 off of something I've actually done. But the NBA makes a lot of money, and it makes it off of us. We watch the games. We buy the products. Nike knows they're going to get their shoes in front of this many eyes and their clothing in front of this many eyes if they advertise with the NBA. And they're not going to get as much if they advertise with the WNBA. Nike's not going to make, Nike, by the way, if you want to sponsor my channel, I'm happy to do it. You won't have to pay me anywhere near what you pay the NBA or the WNBA players. I don't think my NIL is anywhere near 3 million, but you know, I wear a lot of Nike shoes. I'm actually not wearing them at the moment, so I guess it's not a good reason to sponsor me. The point here isn't about the basketball or any other thing. The point is that we now live in a world where people are posting memes as if they mean something, as if they seriously address a serious problem, and as if we've done something to wake people up to a problem. There is real poverty in the world. There is real pay inequality and gender-based inequality in the world. It's embarrassing how many people have bought into an absolute bullshit complaint that Caitlin Clark, whose salary is fixed by the WNBA, and we knew that beforehand, is somehow underpaid because she's not getting $55 million. I suppose it's possible that she could try to compete in the WNBA, but she's been playing with a smaller basketball and other things. Maybe she's 6 foot tall. She's outstanding, but we are sharing memes as if, oh, look, it's this. Somebody, the meme that started my desire to do beast memes as an actual feature on my channel was the meme that says radical Islam is just evangelicalism. It's just evangelicalism without beer or bacon. Those things aren't remotely comparable. First of all, evangelicalism is your neighbor down the street. Somebody replied to me when I objected to this before and said, no, evangelicals are the ones that want to kill all the gays. No, they're not. And every time one of you says something like that it's the evangelicals, they just want to kill all the gays. All you're doing is making more work for the rest of us who actually have to engage with them, who have to try to be honest. Westboro Baptist Church isn't representative of the broader evangelical movement at all. And I get it. The world is monumentally frustrating. I spend a good chunk of most of my days frustrated, and I'm pretty sure that my guest has spent many days frustrated as well. We're going to find out what exactly is stuck in his craw, what's got Seth hung up today as well. But all I want to say on the meme thing is I would be happier if most of the people that I saw sharing memes were only sharing funny memes. Because inevitably, as soon as you try to make an argument or a point and get it down to the meme McNugget of thought, it's no longer useful and may in fact be harmful. Caitlin's going to make millions. She's going to be fine, assuming she doesn't, get injured or suffer some problem early in the WNBA. But saying that this is emblematic of a difference in pay equity between men and women just is beyond ridiculous. You got a business that doesn't make money, and it's a business that is entirely about making money by appealing to people. If anything, we should be glad that they have Caitlin and potentially others, because she brought more viewers to college women's basketball and may in fact bring more viewers to the WNBA and may in fact boost that business to the point where it might become profitable one of these days. But I'm still going to have to deal with more memes that are flawed arguments. And then I have to make this decision. And this is partly where y'all come in. Maybe we can put it up as a poll. Should I actually spend time trying to correct bad memes or correct the misinformation in bad memes or correct the misinformation in the little things that I'm shared around? Or should I just say, you know what? Let people be wrong? Because the latter one is almost impossible for me to do. And it's because I hate being wrong myself, and I hate living in a world where people are wrong. But maybe I should just take a chill pill. Please welcome my guest for tonight, my good friend Seth Andrews. What is stuck in your craw, my friend? What are you about to throw a fit about?
You know what's funny? When I was hearing you talk, it's almost like when somebody posts one of those inspirational sayings that they're often very reductive, and they start with, I don't know who needs to hear this. which is code. And it means
For nobody.
all of you need to hear this because I've got a message. And it will say something about a very serious topic. And, it's not that they can't be true, but so often they just hit like kind of a Lifetime movie. They're not the best way to. Now, I like my memes. I'm on my page, will drop memes quite a bit. I've finally gotten to the point where I can subcontract out some of the social media postings because I'm trying to be more of a producer these days. I'm spending so much time populating the pages because I'm a freaking control freak, right? So I finally got some help on that. And I do a lot of memes, but there are criteria. Most of them, they're either funny or they're conversation starters. And I have been wrong and shown, and I have to go back and remove and apologize and whatnot. But there are still some atheism related memes out there that I saw when I first came out of the faith in 2008, 2009. Science flies you to the moon. Religion flies you into buildings. Science is an amazing and wonderful thing, but science is a process, and it really is determined by the intent and the usage of science. Science also created thermonuclear weapons. I'm not saying they're equivalent, but it's so freaking reductive. Why are we sharing those? The ones that talk about how we need to walk away from religion, so grow up, as if those who believe are just immature. It's all about immaturity. They're mental children. There's one, and I actually wrote this down, where they have an acronym for atheist. It's a thoughtful, honest, ethical, intelligent, skeptical thinker. Are you shitting me? Right? Atheism is simply the non-belief in God. It does not guarantee you're a skeptic, that you're a thinker, that you're intelligent, that you're ethical, that you're a good person. And people in superior ways will send that out there as if somehow they've won an argument. But the one that's driving me crazy, and I think you and I've talked about this before. I had this conversation on a recent podcast with Paulogia and Shannon Q. For the love of Pete, stop saying that religion is a mental
illness. Yeah.
Stop it. And right now, I just came off a comment section where people are still trying to defend that it is a mental illness and why. And they're aligning mental illness with illusion, bad ideas, and what kind of a brain is more accepting of bad ideas. And some people are going to be more predisposed to bad ideas because they are mentally ill. I mean, the gymnastics are amazing. I did not have a change of IQ when I left religion. I don't know why this argument is still out there. And you're right. Every time somebody shares that stuff, they not only make the job harder for people who are trying to have one-on-one conversations often with religious people about the tenets of their faith and the effects of religion on society, etc. But they are causing our interlocutors in many ways to just think we're assholes and shut down. They're conversation killers. Please, I beg of you, stop saying religion is a mental illness. That's my beef today.
Yeah, it's I've done that a million times, and I was really trying to figure out the best way to get to my point today, because I don't hate memes. I have often said I hate memes, but when I say that, I'm talking about, when you tried to condense a complicated thing into something really small and you got it wrong. I mean,
I'm tracking. I got you.
My ex is the meme queen of the atheist community, pretty much, and just post stuff all the time, and I laugh and I love it. And I will sometimes I still send her stuff and she sends me stuff, and it's great. And there's some really cool stuff out there. But one of the things is that it's created like a meme industry where somebody, I know how this happens. Somebody be sitting around with one of their friends having a drink, and they say something and immediately go, "Oh, that should be one of those internet memes," without any more thought into it, without thinking about whether or not it's right or whatever, because it sounds clever. And so Dan Dennett has this concept called a deepity, which I've talked about several times before. And a deepity is a statement. And to the extent that it is true, it is trivial. And to the extent that it is profound, it is false. And yet it feels true and profound, like love is all you need. Well, to the extent that love is all you need, that's kind of, trivial, but to the extent that it's profound, it's actually false. You need oxygen and all these other things as well. But I see those deepities. There was one that was actually just a straight up false statement that was, I don't know if Penn Jillette actually said it, but it's attributed to Penn. And I kind of commented and corrected on it a little bit just the other day. And I'm not going to go through it. This is what I'm going to be doing with the new segment called Beast Memes, because I want to take the ones that are related to atheism. And how the people will sit there and do like those S tier to F tier rankings. I'm going to do Beast Memes is going to be something like that, but a little bit more, because it's going to be how and why they ended up in these. So the religion is mental illness one ends up in the F tier for all of these reasons, and the Caitlin Clark WNBA salary one ends up in the D tier or whatever. Although that one probably won't be in there because it's not related to atheism. But I just sat there and I watched. I see tons of memes. I scroll like anybody else does. Anytime I've got a break, I've got to go I got a brand new phone. I have to take it in to get it fixed, because for the first couple of days, the battery lasted like a day and a half. And now the battery lasts like an hour. And I started getting weird pop-ups from about a SIM card, which doesn't exist. So I'm going to have to take my phone in, but it would probably last 30 minutes if I scrolled any more than I did. Pull up one more meme and try to save it. I've got so many. I'm old school. I'm not quite so old that I need to take a picture of my computer monitor the way my parents have done. But I absolutely will screenshot a meme or an image or a picture or a comment. Basically, almost every time I block somebody anywhere, I take a picture of the comment that had me block them, and I just archive it. That way, if anybody asks, they're like, I don't understand. Why did you block me? My original thought was, I could just go look it up because there's a screenshot there of whatever the comment was. And then I realized I'm never going to do that. There's no way I'm going to go back and look up random person I don't know. Let me go through all of the thousands of screenshots that I've got on my phone, find the one that's got your name in it, and then have a conversation about what was over. At some point, I'm just going to wipe my block list and start over.
At some point, though, is it about tone setting? I mean, I used to get caught in the swirling eddies of online discussion on everything because I'm an arguer. I want to get in the soup. I'm going to stir the pot. And I found myself exhausted, frustrated. So it's an imperfect solution. And it's so hard to do situational things because when you look case by case, you have to qualify it. And that's a subjective decision. But whenever I see somebody who posts something, James Fell, historian, I had him on the show. Love the guy. I think he's just so smart and funny. But he posted something about the utility of religion, and has religion always been bad? Is it bad for us? And of course, you say the word religion. Well, we got to define that, and might as well pack a lunch. What kind of religion? Theistic, deistic, secular religion. What are the tenets of that religion? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not telling you anything. But I jumped in quickly just to go on record, not because I was going to get into anything with anybody, saying that we understand as far as the human history, the utility of religion, tribalism, community protections, resource gathering, identity, etc. But in the information age, those conversations change. I always like to lean on Ingersoll's quote, the more false we destroy, the more room there will be for the true. And it matters if a religious claim is not true. So I can understand the utility. I can even support people who want to be religious in a way that it's not superstitious. I get that. But it's not one of those things where if somebody commented and say, oh, yeah, screw you, or here's where you're wrong, that I have the bandwidth to spend the rest of the day on it. I mostly want to go in, set a tone, maybe see if the reply has merit, and then move on with my day. But it's hard, I think, for arguers, for activist temperaments, whenever we see something wrong that's posted online. I totally feel you.
Yeah, and it's don't get me wrong. Nobody should get me wrong. I am undeniably part of the problem. I'm part of the problems that I'm identifying. I participate in a lot of this stuff, and I am like, if you're wrong, I don't care if I've known you for 20 years or have no clue who you are. I have no qualms at all about saying so, because it's not a personal thing for me. All I want is, I'm doing the Ingersoll quote that Seth just talked about by trying to demolish the false so that we have more room for true. Now, what it does is that there are people who can appreciate that. I just got told the other day, Seth just had a birthday and I just had a birthday. Seth's older than me, and he always will be, and I will remind him of that forever. But I learned something the other day that I did not know. On Facebook, when you get a message, you can reply to that with just like a thumbs up. And I do that most of the time. If I get if we've had like a back and forth conversation and the last message comes in, I don't want to leave. I think people view it as rude to leave you on read. Like, it's clear you read it, but you didn't reply. So I tend to give thumbs up as just a, cool. Got the message. We're moving on to whatever's next. But there are the people who are considerably younger than us view that as passive aggressive, because they view the thumbs up as, yeah, fuck off. And I'm like, hang on, how did that happen? How many people have been mad at me when all I'm doing is saying, cool, got it, and moved on to the next thing? And in their head, they're like, that prick.
So how do you? We need to perfect cloning technology. I feel overwhelmed often. And what I want to do, what I would like to do, it's like the birthday wishes that came in, goodwill from all over the world. I was just blown away, just blew my mind. No physical way to be able to respond to everybody's good wishes and happy birthdays. But I would love to be able to just go and hug everybody who sent something. And it's hard. The perfect here is the enemy of the good. You do what you can, and hopefully everybody will understand.
Well, you've already been voted by at least one viewer as sporting the younger aesthetic between the two of us. I think with the Santa
you've got
beard,
that wise old man beard going.
Yes.
I mean, that just adds wisdom to you. So you have the benefit of that.
It's a toss-up as to whether or not I'm looking more like Dan Dennett or James Randi every single time I show up for this. But I'm going to keep doing this. Look, we got callers, and I want to make sure we get to all these callers. As a reminder, well, first of all, I wanted to ask you before we get to the callers, what have you got going on that people should look at? Because if we get distracted by callers, I'm not going to get a chance to promote your stuff. And so I want to make sure we get one of them out early.
When I got the invite in, I was like, hey, Matt, would you mind if I mention that I'm doing a second podcast? Because I'm trying to get the word out about it. I love what I do with The Thinking Atheist, thethinkingatheist.com. I love what I do. I've been doing it for 15 years, and it is my first love. But I'm also in love with storytelling. I'm a fan of the broadcast style of a classic AM broadcaster. His name is Paul Harvey. Not a fan of his politics, but as far as that old school 20th century broadcaster, he was the thing. He was it. And he had a feature called The Rest of the Story. It was about 4 minutes long. It ran every weekday on your drive home. You would stop what you were doing and you would listen to this story, this true thing, usually true. His fact checking was occasionally sketch. And at the end, he would have a zinger. He would have a surprise. He would have something that just pull the rug out from underneath you, and you would go, no, I can't believe it. Well, he passed away like 15 years ago. His son took over. It was horrifyingly bad. It was bad. And the show eventually went away, and no one had taken up that torch. Well, I'm not Paul Harvey. I'm me. I know my style. I have a specific way of telling stories that I'm going to own. But the spirit of Paul Harvey exists in a new project that I'm doing called True Stories with Seth Andrews. So if you would like to give a birthday gift to me, your humble activist co-host guest tonight, subscribe on all major podcast apps. True Story with Seth Andrews. Do I have 3 minutes to do one for you right here? Because I have one.
I have.
Okay.
You can just.
All right. Because we're going 2.5 hours. But here's the flavor I'm talking about. This is always a fun one because it's one of the first ones I did. I actually did this at a party the other night in a room with 12 people, and they just totally ate it up. Okay, the story goes like this. And forgive me if I jack up a couple of the details as far as the years, but it's 99% accurate. You can fact check me on it. Okay, the year is 1953. I believe it's the month of March. And a man named John was a code breaker for the United States military. This is 53. This is 8 years after the ending of the Second World War. But the Cold War is well underway, right? This political tug of war between superpowers, specifically the United States and Soviet Russia. And John was there to intercept secret coded Russian transmissions and then send those translations up the chain of command. And on one day in 1953, the traffic was saying that Stalin's health is failing. It doesn't look good. Doctors have been summoned, etc. What happened to Stalin would affect what happened on the world stage. This is like a 20-year dictator of the Soviet Union, a man who ruled with an iron fist, a man who, through cruelty or incompetence, was responsible for the deaths of 20 million of his own citizens, and who really had an iron fist when dealing with the rest of the world. What happened to Stalin was huge. This is information Russia wanted guarded. They wanted to control who knew what and when. And yet John was there, and he finally heard that message that Joseph Stalin is dead. And he passed that message to his superiors, went up the chain to soon reach the ear of President Dwight Eisenhower. Now, what makes this story interesting has nothing to do with Stalin. What makes it interesting is that the man who decoded a message that would one day go on to meet the ear of a president, that guy would in his life and career go on to meet presidents, to shake hands with presidents. John was a musician, honorably discharged. He began to write and record music and perform concerts in front of hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of people. He would go on in his life to be inducted into both the Rock and Roll and the Country Music Hall of Fame and become a household name. You see that John who sat in the decoder's chair was the same John who walked the line, who went down to that burning ring of fire and sang the Folsom Prison Blues, Johnny Cash. Is that not fun, Matt? I mean, is that not a fun story?
Absolutely fun.
I'm just telling you. It's a nice distraction for me. Anyway, True Stories with Seth Andrews. You've been most kind to indulge me. Thank you, Matt, very much for that. So,
no worries at all. I'm honored to have been a part of a short preview of True Stories.
I only do one show a night, kids. I only do one show a night. Tip your waiter. Tip your waiter.
All right. We have a bunch of callers, and there was one of our regular viewers has called in, is calling in to have a discussion, and I'm interested to see how that goes. But because I have a rule here, a rule that theistic callers are always going to get top priority on all the shows that I end up doing, we're going to start with the theist that we have, because I'm going to try to do what I can to honor my word. So for our regular caller, you're just going to have to hold for a little bit. As we get to these callers, if you're a theist, if you're calling in with something potentially contentious, if you're calling in for something that Seth or I or both of us are likely to disagree with, please understand there are technical issues where there's a delay. And I will also almost certainly be interrupting to try to get clarity, because one thing that happens over and over again is one or both of us, the caller or us, will say something assuming everybody understands it and then try to go on to the next thing. That may not be the case. You may be using a word in a way, maybe you've used faith or evidence or whatever else in a way that needs some clarification. Please, I will do my best to exercise patience. I don't have to say anything about Seth. Seth will be patient. But I'm going to have to probably put people on mute from time to time in order to get to the heart of the disagreement, because genuinely all I care about is, can we actually have a conversation about where we differ that people can benefit from and understand? And so I'm going to start here first with Shogun. I can hear us in the background. So that's another thing, is make sure that you have turned your
I'm on
background noise and stuff off, but Shogun's calling from, I don't know where you're calling from, and you've given your pronoun as it. So welcome, you're on with Seth and Matt. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Dillahunty. You use it as a pronoun. That's not really a comment about my identity. I just like to keep things real.
Sure.
All right. The reason I called tonight, I was a little bit of a subterfuge here. I'm a BSer. I gave you some BS. Forgive me, sir, but I am talking about the group of atheists that do not get a voice in the movement. I mean, of course, the evil atheists. Evil atheists like Joel Osteen and Pat
Shogun.
Robertson and Libby Hinn. Yes, sir. Yeah.
It says here that you're a theist, and it says that you were going to talk to something related to Rastafarianism, and now you're saying
that's correct.
That you're here to talk about Joel Osteen, who's an evil atheist. I don't count Joel Osteen as an atheist. Joel Osteen doesn't count himself as an atheist. I really don't have any interest in any caller calling in to try to make the case that Joel Osteen is an atheist and an evil atheist. Can you just get on with the topic that you said you were going to talk about?
Well, all right. Let's see if we can, let's begin with Rastafarianism. One of the things that we keep talking about as atheists to theists is whether or not Jesus existed. Whether
Shogun?
or not
Shogun?
Yeah.
Are you an atheist? Because you said we as atheists.
Yeah, I'm both.
No, you can't be
My
both.
friend, do you not understand how BS is?
Okay, I'm going to put you on mute because I'm not going to have you do what you're doing right now. You're either a believer that there is some God, in which case you're a theist, or you are not a believer, in which case you're a non-theist, an atheist. You can't be both. It says here that you're a theist, but you just said we atheists, which makes me think that you are lying and a troll. And I don't want to think that about you or anybody else. So I'm going to unmute you. Do you believe in a God?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to take issue about...
Do you believe in a God? I asked a question. That's the only thing I give a fuck about right now.
I think it's more of a sliding scale than a dichotomy.
Well, you told the call screener that you were a theist.
Correct.
That means you believe in a God.
I believe in all of them, or none of them, as it suits me, because I'm an evil atheist man.
Goodbye.
Wow.
So, in order to keep my sanity and attempt to keep my cool, if you think you can be a theist and an atheist, don't ever call me unless you only want to address that topic and have me take time to explain how that's not possible. Just like it's really easy. Are you both alive and not alive? The answer is no. You should probably look up like the law of identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. Basically says that you can't be both of those things in the same way at the same time. If you want to have some esoteric bong hit discussion about how theism is a sliding scale, I don't care. I mean, I just don't. But you managed to jump the queue and get ahead of other theists who I'm hoping the other theists on here are more interested in having honest conversations. So we'll try this with Chuck in Florida, who has no pronouns or no preferred pronouns. Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having me up on the program. I am a theist.
Sure.
Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. But what I was calling is to discuss the idea that religion is like a product of natural selection. Religion is part of the extended phenotype of human being. That is to say that.
So what? My only concern is whether or not a particular claim, a particular God claim, a particular religious claim is true. There is a way to look at anything and everything we do as if it is part of the extended phenotype. I don't care.
Right. But there is wisdom that religions offer. Religions are
I don't care. I care about whether or not I care about whether or not religious claims are true. Have I ever, Chuck? I don't know how much of my content you've actually watched. I've never suggested that religions don't often provide and leverage wisdom. So why on earth would you and I have a discussion about something we don't disagree on?
Right. But these ideas were these come from Robert Wright. He's a philosopher.
I don't care, Chuck. Chuck,
Okay.
are you going to defend some theistic position? I don't need a book report on shit I already know and accept.
All right. I just thought I was making an argument for religion that is based in a biological adaptation, but you don't. Essentially,
I only
God.
care about arguments about them being true, not about them being useful.
Right, but there's plenty of things in evolution that are useful and exist just because they are useful. Religion is one of those things, but you don't even want to evaluate.
Chuck, religion isn't a part of evolution, not biological evolution. That's why we talked about it as the extended stuff that comes out of this, extended phenotype. But
right,
I'm not here. I'm not here to have a conversation about whether or not religions can be useful. Of course they can. I've said that thousands of times.
Right.
Are you going to defend your religious beliefs as true or not?
Well, I think if you get tied up in the literal claims of religion,
are you going to defend your religious beliefs as true or not? I'm going to put you on mute for just 1 second so that I don't have to throw a little hissy fit here. When I gave all those tips to the theistic callers, here's the number one tip, which I've given many times before, and is most important. Answer the question you're asked. If I pause to ask a question, I'm never going to let you say anything other than the answer to that question. Once you prove that you can answer that question, then maybe we can move on to the next thing. But if I take the time to ask a question, or if my co-host takes the time to ask a question, that's the question that needs to be addressed next. If you're not going to do that, I don't see any reason to have a conversation. So are you going to defend the truth of your religious beliefs?
No, because you're never going to believe. So I'm not going to do that.
Well, I have a question. Can I jump in?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Chuck, wouldn't we be talking about evolved tribalism first? And then religion would actually be a subset of our tribalistic tendencies. And, then come the conversations about the thousands upon tens of thousands of variations of religious belief. But what I hear in your comments or question is, why do human beings tend to lean into the higher power and religious model, which I see as tribalism first, and then religion is actually the window dressing of tribalism. Also, Dr. John Wathy is a computational neuroscientist who has written a book called The Illusion of God's Presence that talks about how we may be born with an evolved desire to look toward a parental figure. And there are certain parts of the brain that are activated, which might explain many people's desire to look upward and to reach out for a father or a Mother Earth or whatever. But all of this is tribalism. This is brain chemistry. This is sort of a genetic programming through the line. But I see them as evolved communal, primate behaviors. I don't see them as religion. I think tribalism, then religion is a subset of that. Would that be fair, Chuck?
It's a little bit more nuanced than that. The reason why religions are ubiquitous in human societies, going back to, when we came out of the jungle, is because it constitutes an extended phenotype that is fashioned by natural selection to overcome challenges related to coordination and cooperation. So
yeah, but that's tribalism first. That's tribalism first, right? If I'm an individual out on the African savanna, I am much less likely to be safe. I am much less likely to produce and procure and secure resources. I am much less happy because my life is one that is not a shared existence, and I am much less apt to pass my genes on. So that's a tribalistic tendency, but it's not a religious one. There are religious tribes, but tribalism is actually the category above. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I think that religions, they help to bind groups of genetically unrelated people together into tribes. So it's
they're a
like
form of tribes. They're a form of tribes. Dr. Andy Thompson has a book about how religions actually served to make tribes out of non-kin. So where there was a familial unit, what happens to people who need a tribe, who would benefit from a community, but they are not surrounded by actual genetic relatives, direct relatives. Religion then allowed tribes to form from non-kin. Now, none of this proves that the religions themselves are true.
Well, no, not at all. But it does promote a sense of group-mindedness, and this group-mindedness helps facilitate, cooperation and coordination amongst the group to create like a super organism, and helps you to outcompete other groups. It's like, so it is.
Doesn't this take you back to what Matt was saying earlier about it's the whole useful fiction thing?
He literally just described tribalism.
Yeah.
It benefits my tribe, which is why we already said that. The issue is, I don't care if it benefits my tribe. I care if it's true. Because what happens when you get several different tribes that become stronger as tribes? Now, all of a sudden, how do you resolve conflicts between those tribes if truth isn't the criteria? My God's stronger than your God. My God wants me to kill you more than your God wants me to kill me. Wants you to kill me. There's no resolution to that. So all you're doing is describing tribalism.
Well, it turns out that religions themselves compete against each other. So the most successful religions.
That's what
Chuck
Matt just said, Chuck.
Okay, right. But I was just trying to frame it in a way that is more tangible.
Okay, well, if you're...
what the hell do you mean more tangible?
Forgive me, Matt. Forgive me. Go ahead.
No, I need to know, what do you mean more tangible? Because I think you're just spewing forth words to try to cover yourself, just like last time. Because earlier I said, are you going to defend your God belief? And you said no, and you followed it up by saying, you're never going to believe. Would you like to defend that claim? Would you like to defend your assertion that I'm not going to believe?
Right. Okay, so because I just need like 10 seconds to because we are built to be religious. What
we're not
are?
That's false.
Okay, but in this context, when you see an atheist, this is a person who has replaced this this need to be religious or to believe in God with a
false.
Secular. Right.
I'm not going to let, if you're going to either defend the claim that I'm not going to believe, but you can do it any way you want to, but I'm not going to let you just assert things that aren't true.
Well, the reason why you're not going to believe in religion is because you've replaced that religious belief with a secular ideology. So it's either secular.
Wrong. I'm willing to believe it the second you demonstrate it's true. I didn't replace religion with an ideology that blocks religion. I replaced believing something that isn't demonstrably true with reserving my belief until it's warranted. I'll believe any warranted belief that you present, but you've already said you won't present it. Is it because you can't?
No, it's because your secular ideology is your religion. There's nothing.
No, sir. No, sir. I don't have a secular ideology that is my religion. What I have is skepticism, and I will believe any claim that you present that you can demonstrate is true. Why won't you do that? Why do you have to keep defensively pretending that I am somehow closed to the possibility when you're the one who's closed to presenting a defense of it.
Right, because there's no theistic argument can penetrate the ideology that you already have in place. That's why.
What is the ideology that I have in place that no theistic argument can penetrate, and how do you know that no theistic argument can penetrate it? Have you heard all of them?
Well, I did go through a period of time where I was an atheist, so I'm familiar with a lot of...
Chuck, answer the question that I asked.
Okay. Have I heard all the religious arguments?
That was one of the questions, yes.
Yes, and
cool.
Atheists they're not moved by these arguments.
Wait, it's not are you saying no atheist will accept these, or just me?
People who have taken on a secular ideology like, communism or intersectional
I'm not
feminism.
Communist, Chuck. I'm not a communist, Chuck. I haven't taken on that secular ideology. What secular ideology do I have that is a roadblock to religion?
This notion that everything you believe is scientific, and if it's not...
That's not my position.
Okay. Well, I'm not...
I literally just told you that I'm open to believing anything that you can demonstrate is true. I've never said that everything I believe is scientific. You keep trying to tell me what my secular worldview is. What is my secular ideology that is a roadblock to demonstrating the truth of religion?
Right. Okay. You're tied up in the literal beliefs. So there's nothing. So it's like there's two types of people. There's people who believe that God created man, and there's people who believe that man created God. Right.
I don't believe either of those things. I believe that there are some gods that man have created, but I am not convinced that that's necessarily true for all of them. So if you divide the entire world into two people in your oversimplified model, I don't fit into either one of them. And none of that is in any way an answer to the question that I've asked you like 4 times now, which is, what secular ideology do I possess that is a roadblock to accepting religious claims? Last chance, Chuck.
What secular? I'm not an expert in your specific type of atheism. There's different types of atheism.
Chuck, you shouldn't have made fucking claims about me and asserted what's in my head and then backed off and tried to pretend you're not an expert in me. I'm asking you about me. I didn't ask you about any other atheist on the planet. If you're going to come in and try to tell me, shut up, Chuck. If you're going to come in and try to tell me what's in my head, you don't get to dodge then by saying you're not an expert in what's in my head. You've already pretended to be an expert. So either you retract it or you defend it. Which one is it?
Well, I'm not an expert in your head, so I don't know.
You know what you're not going to be at all ever again, Chuck? A caller on this show. Would you like that? Or any show on the line. Would you like that? I've got your web address right here. I can just block the whole IP address. Why would we need to do that, Chuck? This is really easy. Let me calm down here. You ready? You have asserted that you will not defend your beliefs because you are convinced that I would never accept it. Evidently, you're also convinced that Seth would never accept it. All I wanted to know was, what makes you think that we wouldn't accept it? Because once we establish that, then we can have a conversation about the nature of evidence and what evidence should be considered warranted and how skepticism evaluates claims to try to discern truth. But you don't seem to want to do any of that. And so at this point, I don't know why there's any value in continuing a conversation with you when every time we try to push back on something, you're not an expert in the thing that you just pretended to be an expert in.
It takes a leap of faith to believe what I believe, and there's no way I can you.
Is there anything so there are things that you don't believe, right, Chuck? Like you don't believe in the Hindu gods, right?
No, I don't.
Why don't you take that leap of faith? Why do you take a leap of faith for Jesus, but not a leap of faith for the Hindu gods?
Well, I've had personal experiences in my own life that had led me down this path.
Okay.
What would you say
But-
to a Hindu who came to you and had a personal experience and said, I had a personal experience in my own that's just as valid? You would then accept that based on your guideline.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I would have to. I mean, I know that there are religions outside of my own religion, and I'm more knowledgeable about why I believe what I believe. But to describe why other people
awesome.
believe what they
So I could literally tell you I believe anything because I had a personal experience. You would accept it at face value and become a polytheist or whatever. I mean, I could say flat earth based on faith, and you would then accept that based on your own criteria. Is that right?
No, not exactly. Like, I know why I believe what I believe, and I just have to take your word for it that you had your own experience. So if that's how you have come to your path, then, you know.
Well, let me ask you this, Chuck. I don't mean to belabor this, Matt. Please forgive me. You believe Matt and I are unmovable, right? We won't hear it. We won't be convinced, right? We are set. Why'd you call us? Why are you trying to convince the unconvincible from your perspective?
To be fair, he didn't call to try to convince us of that. He wanted to have a conversation about how religion's part of the extended phenotype, and I won't have that.
Right, exactly.
All right, fair enough. So, I'm speaking to his statement where he said, you guys are simply not going to accept what I'm saying because you are an atheist, and then your definition of atheist to me is not a proper definition. But if your mindset is that we're unmovable, we are set, we're fixed, we cannot be changed, why'd you call? Why are you having a conversation that might change minds of people who will not change?
Well, I was just trying to explain the extended phenotype notion, but that's a non-starter.
Can you define phenotype?
Well, the characteristics of an organism, but the extended phenotype is manifestations of the gene that occur outside of the organism. That's where religion
not necessarily true. The extended phenotype isn't conditioned on the gene. So genes contribute to heritable traits. So I breed reptiles, and so when you get to like Mendelian genetics and comparing the genotype to the phenotype and figuring out whether something's het for something or homozygous for it, that's a big part of what I do every day. When we talk about the extended phenotype, which, by the way, this concept of the extended phenotype was established in a book by Richard Dawkins, the atheist, because it is a metaphor for how memes, which aren't like the internet memes that we were talking about, but ideas and concepts act like genes propagating throughout culture and society and produce things. And there is a concept that religion can be viewed as part of an extended phenotype. The problem is you tried to tie that to genes, and that is absolutely, undeniably false. My genes don't have any say about what religion I am or am even likely to be, other than socially, I am likely to share the religion of my parents. But if you had plucked me out of a hospital on the day that I was born and moved me to India and had me raised there, it was that I'm not more likely to become a Southern Baptist there, am I? Did my genes change, or did the scenery change?
It's a subtle distinction. So extended
it's not a subtle distinction. It's a question. Did my genes change in that hypothetical scenario where I was moved from the hospital in Missouri to one in India? No, my genes did not change. So while you can talk about this in a metaphoric sense, you cannot tie it to genes. That's the point I was making. That was your mistake a minute ago.
Well, when I learned about the concept of extended phenotype, it was in a biology class, and the classic example
and Chuck, I'm letting you know that you can't say our religions are tied to our genes. That's a mistake. The fact that you learned about the extended phenotype in a biology class doesn't mean that your extension of the extended phenotype to religion is anything more than metaphor, which also is irrelevant to whether or not they're fucking true, which is all I cared about. So you're even wrong about the extended phenotype because you're trying to tie it to genes.
Fair enough. I see that this line of questioning is not productive, so I won't waste your time.
Cool. Thanks, Chuck. All right. At least
I don't know, it's weird.
we
It's
got
like
someone. Yeah.
Forgive me, brother. There's a little bit of a delay there. My fault. It's just interesting that he was putting religion first and then tribalism. And I think to myself, well, if religion is simply a form of in-group, of community, of tribes, and then the question has to become what religion? And why don't those religions agree? And in what environment were those religions born and cultivated? And why can't those who believe in the religions agree on the specifics, even the basics of their own faith? And there's so many other questions, but he just seemed to start with the assumption that essentially, he says we're all born with a healthy propensity toward his specific God, and he couldn't defend it. And I found that striking.
Yeah, 12. All right, we got a call from Sam in India. Pronouns are he, him. Sam's a theist who wants to ask us, I guess, how can 1.4 billion theists be wrong? Was that the question, Sam?
Yes.
Well, if you'll allow me a slight conceit, I'll answer your question with a question. How can the other 6.5 billion people be wrong?
They have their own religions.
No, that's not an answer to the question. The 1.4 billion theists in India that you're citing is a portion of the world's population, and you're saying, how can all these people be wrong? They can be wrong the same way the other 6.5 billion could be wrong about anything.
But they have tied God with the economic system of the country. So there's incentive for everyone.
Yeah, but it doesn't tell you whether or not the God claim is true. How do we determine whether or not something is true by how popular it is?
No, but then they point out anomalies. So they have the mainstream incentive of God with economy, that's the mainstream river, and then they have anomalies of different events that occurred around that mainstream flow of money. So then they show that, and they have lots of people claiming different things. I don't want to go into all the claims, but there is thousands of different claims, and internet has just elevated that kind of data and claims.
How do we tell whether or not a claim is true, Sam?
If it can be tested independently.
Cool. Those 1.4 billion Indian theists that you're pointing to, and you say, how can they be wrong? What testing can we do to show that they're right?
If they are able to prosper and fulfill their desires?
No. Prosper and fulfilling desire isn't proof that a God exists or that a religious supernatural claim is true.
But that's
Donald Trump made a couple $2 billion the other day, and then, of course, he turned around and lost it. But does him prospering prove that his ideology is true or good, or that God's on his side?
But that's just one person. I'm talking about at scale.
Why does it make a difference whether I'm talking about one person or 1.4 billion?
Because the amount of energy output is different.
What does that have to do with how do you tell if it's true?
So the group that has high energy output is further at will forcing its resources into the God economic propaganda of this country, and then they're prospering and growing with that, and their metrics of life have gone up.
I'm especially confused now because you're talking about God propaganda. So are you saying that there is a God, or that there's not a God, but there's propaganda about a God?
There is no way of knowing whether there is a God or not, because God
Really?
can't
How do
be
you know
measured.
that? How do you know that?
Because you can't measure truth.
How do you know that?
Because whatever we are using today in the military in US, it has the same principles that were discovered during the 19th and the 18th century.
I'm going to pause here, Sam,
still
and I'm going to pause here, Sam, because what you just said makes absolutely no sense to me, given what I asked, and I just may be off track. So I'll see if Seth has something to add, but I don't know if there's much more to do here.
It's a word salad for me. I'm hearing another riff on useful fiction. Right? It has utility. The propaganda has made people happy and prosperous. It has nothing to do with the truthfulness, the veracity of the claims themselves. Matt, is that just another version of the argument from popularity? You throw out the word billion and it's supposed to be impressive.
So the topmost claim of the theistic people is that you can master your mind, and hence you will be in resonance with God.
Which God?
Whichever one you want to believe in.
Okay, so what I want to believe in will then make that true. So if I want to believe in Allah, Thor, Wotan, Freya, Yahweh, Jehovah, if I want to believe, would that then make that God real?
It won't make the God real, but it will help you along your journey.
Okay, so you believe that it may not be true, but it may be some sort of a trick of the minds, a psyching myself up, a useful fiction for living my life, for being happy and prosperous. It's a made up story. It might make me feel good and motivate me, even if it's a lie. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, you can put it like that, yes.
Okay. If it is a lie, should we hold on to it? Should we embrace it? Should we teach it? Should we promote it? If it's not true, should we be agents propagandizing it, to use your word?
So it's not true, but it's not a lie.
Okay, hang on.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay. How can something be both true and not true at the same time?
Well, that's not quite what he said. He may be using lies and someone is telling an intentional falsehood. He says it's not true, but that doesn't mean it's a lie. Like I could
being
say,
a philosopher now? Damn it, Matt.
I'm just trying to keep it.
All right.
Well,
that's fair. When I hear lie, I hear it ain't true. But you're saying that there are different definitions of lie that I may not be aware of. This is more your camp than mine.
If I say I have $300 in my wallet and we open my wallet and it turns out that I only have $200 in my wallet, was I lying or was I just mistaken?
When you have sufficient evidence against the null hypothesis, you can say that it is a lie. But when you don't have that evidence, you cannot really claim that it's a lie. You can just claim it's not true.
I don't need it to be a lie. I'm only concerned as to whether or not it is something that it's true and can it be demonstrated as true. And you called in and said, how can 1.4 billion Indian theists be wrong? And now it sounds like you're saying that you understand that they can be wrong and that they seemingly are likely to be wrong or might be wrong. And so what is the question that you're asking now?
Yeah, so like it's just that when I live my day-to-day life, I try not to put my mind into it, but my Instagram is filled with posts of theism. My real life, wherever I go, it's filled with temples and different kinds of theistic structures. So I try not to go towards it, but it always drags me in and it gives me an incentive. So I start believing in it by default.
Why would you start believing in something before there's a reason to believe? Because if we don't know what so we want to know what the answer is. Is there a God? Why are we here? What happens after death? Is there somebody, watching what we do? Is there a purpose and meaning to life that's externally imposed? Is there some goal that we're trying to? All of those are questions to which I don't know that I have an answer. What you seem to be saying is that when you hear a potential answer for it, your default position is to go ahead and go with that potential answer until somebody proves it wrong. But that puts you in a position where you have to accept multiple different competing and exclusive views. Like you would have to be a Hindu and a Christian and a Scientologist and a Muslim all at the same time because you think that it's impossible to prove or disprove any of those. And so what is your criteria for picking one of those?
Okay. I used to meditate, and during those meditations, there is a hologram in your brain. Would you agree to that fact?
No.
That there is a hologram in your brain?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
By hologram, do you mean a concept?
No, let me explain. It comes from the neck. It goes all the way up till interhemispheric fissure, which is the opening at the top of your brain, and there is nerves going on top of it. So from the bottom to the top, we have a hologram going, and then we have the nerves. So the hologram shows you all the images of your life, and nerves give you the emotions.
No, none of that sounds at all remotely familiar. It's not the correct usage of the term hologram. I don't have a hologram. I tried to give you the best I could by saying, are you talking about concepts? I don't know what you're talking about at all, or how there's love up here above my head, because to whatever extent I could possibly try to manifest love, it's certainly not anything that's above my head or outside. It is a mental state.
Yeah, but when you have love, it's a summation equation of thoughts and emotions, right?
No, that does not. So love is a word we use and we apply it to a number of different things. I love Seth. I love Arden. I don't love them the same way, but we use the same word for those things. But what we're describing is a psychological state that is identifiable and detectable and durable. But when you say it's a man, I can't even come up with the words that you used to try to do this. That doesn't make any sense to me. Love is a word that we use to describe things that we feel and do.
Yeah, I think if we boil it down to first principles, it boils down to what I said.
Well, congratulations.
Because everything can be broken down, because it's your metric, right? You want to use metrics. So when we use metrics, we can always go to the base level 0 to see what the first principles were. And that's what I'm saying right now, that if you want love and you want to quantify that, it is a summation equation between images and nerves or blood flowing through your body.
Matt, let's contact the Nobel Prize Committee right now, because they need to know
we've
that.
accepted it. All those people who don't experience love. Anybody who doesn't experience love, you've now been told it's a summation equation between images and love. Congratulations, Sam. You have come up with a new model of love that makes sense to almost nobody but you. But thanks.
I wish my neck high hologram was working. I feel cheated somehow. Apparently, I need batteries in that. But
it's wild to think. Yeah, I don't get it. I tried.
I didn't understand most of that call, Matt. I was working hard. I was trying, but a lot of it just seemed to come down to the argument from popularity, useful fiction, etc. Let me ask you a question. You know, we talk a lot about religion, and it's just one of those words where you have to define it and then define the definitions of the. I mean, it's just one of those really layered terms. Is it a theistic religion? Is it the Satanic Temple? Is it secular Buddhism? Is it just something else? You really have to ask. What are your thoughts on the utility of a religion that is not superstitious? Let's say whether it's TST or something else, but it provides the framework. Some people would call the Oasis model that. It's community. They do a lot of sort of ritualized music with special speakers. They have specific tenets that they live by, whether it's humanistic or otherwise. Would you call that religion? Is there utility in a non-superstitious religion?
Yeah. I think there's utility in lots of things, but I mean, if you go back to like even the Secular Humanist Manifesto, the first version of the Secular Humanist Manifesto defines it and describes it as religion. Let me find this real quick. At the beginning of the Secular Humanist Manifesto 1, the time has come for widespread recognition of the radical changes in religious beliefs throughout the modern world. The time is past for mere revision of traditional attitudes. Science and economic change have disrupted the old beliefs. Religions the world over are under the necessity of coming to terms with new conditions created by a vastly increased knowledge and experience in every field of human activity. The vital movement is now in the direction of a candid and explicit humanism. In order that religious humanism may be better understood, we, the undersigned, desire to make certain affirmations which we believe the facts of our contemporary life demonstrate. I have I don't have any problem with religion, secular humanism, or things that are religion-ish, which that word already makes more sense to me than anything Sam said. But Oasis, those sorts of things, because what we're doing in that sense is we're talking a little bit about what Chuck was saying, that without going into extended phenotype stuff, humans, generally speaking, there are exceptions, are social creatures, communal creatures, and we benefit from that, which is one of the reasons why Chuck can point to, religions cropping up and strengthening my tribe. It'd be really, I think the ideas that come closest to something I'd approve of would be the sort of communal ideas that strengthen all tribes. The notion of, and some of the more pacifistic religions definitely have those things, like Jains wearing gauze over their face so they don't even accidentally inhale a fly or a bug, because they respect all life and they're not going to kill anything. I think there's big problems with that as well, and I don't think it's all positive and stuff. But you're never going to have a world war between Jains. You're not going to have a civil war between Jains, or at least not one that makes any sense with their views. So yeah, you have to take a step and define further down from religion, but there's utility and good in the cultural ideas that we value and share, even if they ultimately point on some occasions to things that aren't true. I think the most common example is maybe telling kids you can grow up to be anything you want. We know that's not true. And sometimes it's even less true. We say it as a broad generalization. Hey, you can grow up to be anything you want. And we say it because we have no idea what each individual kid might be able to do. But we know that there are possibilities out there, and we've been surprised by what people have done and how they've broadened those possibilities. And people have become president who I'm shocked have become president. People have become, representatives and senators that I think have no business doing that job, but I don't get to decide. There are people who become doctors and actors and all kinds of things that, if you sat down and picked it out, you wouldn't have guessed that. And so what we're saying is, don't listen to the people who say you need to be this, or this, that try to narrow your options. Go for the things you want to do most. And the facts of reality will determine whether or not you're going to be successful. If we taught people stuff like that, we wouldn't have to say things like you can be anything you want. And we definitely wouldn't have to lie. I can look at here's an 18-year-old that's 5 foot tall. You're not playing in the NBA. You cannot be an NBA, first string playing on the court in the finals, kind of player. Could you end up on an NBA team? Yeah, you absolutely could. There may be some reason that you would end up, but anyway, I sidetracked.
I got you. I'm interested in religion in terms of, well, we've been speaking a lot about community, but shared interests and values. Right. We do it at an atheist event. Some people are like, well, why would you attend atheist church? Because they see every gathering of people with shared interests and values as religious, meaning they've just surrendered to religion, something that humans do anyway. And I'm one of those guys who believes that life is better when it's shared. And I think we're more effective in most cases together. We get together, we support each other, we love each other, we challenge each other. And we are able to work towards shared goals with increased strength as a larger body. And if somebody ends up calling that, if a secular religion, where we're not cheating ourselves, we're not lying to ourselves or someone else, but it's really about our interests and values. It speaks to our need and the utility of ritual. We are creatures of ritual. And so if that provides, if it scratches an itch, if it makes a human need, I'm not going to get pedantic about the word religion. There will be the apologists who are going to be like, well, everybody's religious about something. I'm not going to take that bait. But I am interested in the larger topic of a religion without lying or without delusion, something based on interest and values. Is that a good thing? And I think in some cases it can very much be so.
Yeah, that's why I push back on Chuck when you say I replaced my religion with some other ideology. It's a way of saying, well, you're religious too. You just have this different religion. What I have wouldn't preclude any of the religions we know of if they could demonstrate the truth of their propositions.
But Matt, isn't that the difference between forgive me, but is that not the difference between accepting whatever your framework is from without, like the holy book, the dogma, the clergy, the cleric, the authority with a capital A? The religious model tells you who you are, what your values are, what rules to abide by. But your model is more organic and innate. It's more inside out, where you're saying, well, these are my values and interests. And so now I'm going to go out and have community based on my own terms. I mean, would that be a way to sort of demonstrate the difference between a religious or a theistic or deistic religion and a humanistic one?
Yeah, you could probably frame it that way. It's just that when I care about whether or not it's true, if it turns out that it is true, that there is a God, and he has some thoughts about my life, then I would absolutely believe that God existed and would accept whatever his thoughts are about my life. Whether or not I would, like if God said, I want you to be this, I might not do that, but that doesn't change whether or not I believe that. So it's not like I can believe that there's a God without being a part of the religion that worships that God, because the worship is a separate kind of component.
Didn't mean to go off into the weeds there. I just popped into my brain.
Oh, we just lost the caller that's been on hold for an hour.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's probably my fault.
No. Why is it in the screening room? Here, let me take it out of the screening room. Bob in the UK.
Hello.
Thanks for calling. You're live.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank God for that. Yeah. Basically, I'm a Muslim, and so the question I have here for you, Matt, and your co-host, is that why don't you believe God exists, and have you got any evidences he doesn't?
Well, I'll give you my answer. It's pretty quick and easy. I don't believe that a God exists because I haven't seen sufficient evidence to confirm that he does exist. I don't need any evidence. I don't have any burden of proof to demonstrate that he doesn't exist. But I think there's really good reason to think that no gods exist. And that's essentially the argument from divine hiddenness, that the facts of the world aren't consistent with the world we'd expect for the gods that people are proposing. But I don't believe, merely because the claims of God, whether it's Allah, Jesus, whoever, have not met their burden of proof. And Seth can differ or amend as needed.
No, I mean, I'm totally on that page. And I would go a step further, and many of the specific gods that have been posited have not just, they have not just not met a burden of proof, but they have been demonstrably debunked. Like, we know that the Bible is the product of human hands. We know that Yahweh, Jesus are certainly the work of human imagination. So we can scratch those off, and many other gods that have been written about. And as far as the larger nebulous umbrella God that has no name or face, good luck proving that. But beyond that, I think Matt articulated it perfectly.
Okay. So basically, I just want to clarify what you said. You basically are saying that you need to see something to believe in something. Like, for instance, you need to see God to believe in God, right? Physically.
No, what I'm saying is, whatever the claim is, like, for example, if you say God exists, I want to know what the evidence is for that claim. And then we make a determination as to whether or not that sufficient evidence is sufficient to believe the claim. So I don't necessarily need to see God to believe in a God, but I need to see evidence for a particular God to have my belief justified.
That's fine. I'm willing to go in that direction, Matt.
Cool.
So, I believe, obviously, as Muslims believe, we believe that nothing can exist without God's permission, except God. So, in that conclusion for us, it's basically saying that everything has been created except God, which
So
means
here's the problem,
for us
Bob. When you start your first thing was nothing can exist without God's permission except God. How do you prove that that's true?
How do I prove that? Is because we know that in this world everything comes from something. Okay, I know you guys believe in evolution and that kind of stuff, yeah. But
so we don't actually know that. We don't actually know that, Bob. We don't know that everything comes from something because we don't know where everything comes from. But even if we knew for a fact, 100%, that everything comes from something, that would in no way affirm your statement, because your statement is that nothing can exist without God's permission except God. So even if we knew that everything comes from something, that would not in any way confirm your statement that nothing can exist without God's permission. So how do you demonstrate that it's true that nothing can exist without God's permission?
Because I don't. For instance, Matt, I would like you to actually show me something.
No.
Yeah. For instance, no. Please, I did allow you to speak. I don't want to interrupt you because I know you don't like being interrupted.
Okay, I appreciate the fact that you think you allowed me to speak on my own fucking show, but I just asked you to justify your statement. You have asserted, as the very first thing that you say, we believe, as in Muslims believe, nothing can exist without God's permission except God. And all I've asked you to do is to justify that that statement is true. Why would you need to ask me anything?
I think the line just cut up. Sorry, can you repeat your question? Sorry.
Why would you need to ask me anything at all right now when you still haven't answered my question about how nothing can exist without God's permission?
Because I've already told you, yeah?
No, you haven't, sir. No, sir, you have not. What is your justification for the claim that nothing can exist without God's permission?
No. I think you got my explanation wrong. What I'm saying is, yeah, I'll repeat it again. I think what you're saying, I think I may have said it in the wrong way. You got it in the wrong way. I'll repeat it again. What I'm saying is that for all human beings and everything to exist, yeah, there must be a God there. This is what I mean. I'm not saying everything comes out in this world is by God.
Bob,
it's God.
Bob,
God's
I wasn't
permission.
confused. I didn't get your thing wrong. You believe that for human beings and everything to exist, there must be a God. How do you know that's
That's
true?
right.
How do you know that's true?
Because like if you think about it logically, yeah, it makes sense. How can something come out of nothing? You know, there must be something there that will originate these things.
Okay, you are now absolutely restating the bullshit that we just went through a minute ago. So first of all, what you just said was, because if you think about it logically, it makes sense. I'm sorry, but that's not evidence, nor is it an argument. That is sophistry, and it is absolutely useless. It's pablum. It's beneath anybody's consideration. But you followed it up with, how can something come from nothing? Let's say that something can't come from nothing. That still doesn't tell us whether or not there's a God or whether or not a God is required for everything to exist. So we're back to the very beginning again, where now you've said nothing can exist without God's permission except God, but you rephrased that as for human beings and everything else to exist, there must be a God. And now I'm asking you for the final time, how do you know that that position is true?
Because look, to be honest, Matt, we cannot actually physically show you these things. You understand what I'm saying? So how do I know it's true? But if you for instance, here, Matt, I'm gonna give you this example, right? I'm answering your question, but as an example, okay? Please be patient with me. If I build a wall, yeah, an empty
We're done,
wall,
Bob. We're done, Bob. Listen to me. You're not ready. Call me back another time. I've typed down everything you just said. The point here is that listen to me, Bob, so that you do better when you call back. Your view is that a God is laugh all you want. If you listen to this back, you pumped out a bunch of gibberish, and I'm being overly kind to you by trying to educate you so that you don't look stupid the next time you do this. Are you going to listen or not?
I've been listening to you, Matt. Come on. Just laughing doesn't mean I'm not listening to you. I'm actually listening to you.
Are you going to listen or not?
I am listening to you, yes.
Cool. When you say, in order for humans to exist, there must be a God, and we ask, how do you justify that? Here's what you said. Because look, to be honest, Matt, we cannot show you physically these things. There's nothing in that sentence that is in any way a defense. It's an avoidance of defense. And at no point did we ask for any sort of physical demonstration of anything. And then you said, how do I know it's true? For instance here, Matt, and you immediately went to if we have a building requires a builder. But you have avoided the question. And the question is, how do you know that for humans to exist, a God must exist? You need to go off, research that question, and construct a logical syllogism supported by evidence to justify that claim. And until you do, you don't get to use that claim as a premise in your argument, because then your argument is rejected outright. And I would like for you to present an argument where you could say, hey, premise one is this, and we agree. Cool. Premise two is this, and we agree. And then boom, you get down to, therefore there is a God. Therefore a God is required. It's like you've never had an argument with anybody who knows anything about logic. And yet you came in saying, well, if you look at it logically, that's not how logical arguments or evidence work.
Right. I think, Matt, to be honest, there's nothing that I can actually show you, because I personally believe, and most people will believe, like something has to come from something. So if you can't accept that,
Bob,
then I can't really.
Bob, I granted you, for the sake of argument, that statement was true and showed you how it still doesn't prove the thing you're saying. So if you think, If you think that there's nothing you can show me, then why do you believe? Are you gullible?
I believe based on maybe what you said that I should go back and do more investigation. Okay, fine, that's fair enough. Okay, but I'll still stick to my logical thinking, and if I go back, I'll do my research and see. That's fine for me, Matt. It's logical. Maybe not for you.
No, that's not the way logic works, Bob's. Logic, something isn't fucking logical for you. Logic isn't a personal thing. Your arguments are either sound and valid or they are not. You don't get your own fucking personal logic. That's not how logic works. Well, if you know that, then why did you just assert the opposite, Bob? Why did you just say it's logical for you?
Because for me right now, I accept it. For you, it's not. This is why I said it that way. You understand what I'm saying?
That's not.
So maybe, hopefully.
Bob, you said it's logical for you, and then you said you know that there's no such thing as just logical for you.
Okay, can I repeat what I said?
No, because, I don't need you to repeat anything. Go off and think and call back another time.
Okay,
because,
all right.
Cool.
Sorry?
Thanks.
What's that? Sorry?
I said cool, thanks. Oh, I'm sorry, Seth.
I was hearing shades of William Lane Craig. I know it's a weird comparison to make, but it's like everything had a cause. Everything came from something that I'm guessing he thought was already there in place. And then he made this chasm-sized leap to a specific deity with a proper name. The arguments he was making, like everything came from something, could be applied to Christianity. And yet he is defending Islam. And I was struck by how he really wasn't making a claim or rather a proper defense of a specific religion. He was stuck on, well, there must have been, I'm guessing, an intelligence that first caused the watchmaker that put everything together. Everything came from something. To me, it's sort of a non-statement. Like, what exactly do these terms mean? And as we are still discovering the nature of the universe, how do you defend? How do you qualify? It's just this weird word salad. I don't really know what to do with it. So,
even in the most generic sense, I'll put my pause bars up here. Maybe Arden finds a clip out of this. I don't know, but even in the most generic sense, what we're saying is there must be some explanation for why things exist. If you start with that and you say, would you at least agree with me that there's some explanation for why things exist? I would say, sure. Because among the candidate explanations then is they just do, that they exist. And the explanation is they've always existed in some form or another, and whatever. But to say there must be some explanation for things, great. Let's see if we can find the explanation. The problem is that Bob is not just going straight to Allah, although he is, but Bob's beginning with the explanation for why there's something rather than nothing must be God. Well, that's the very thing you're trying to prove. You don't get to start premise one with, in order for anything to exist, there must be a God. That is a statement that you're going to try and leverage your entire religion and all of the things you draw after it based on that one statement. So, rightly, we're saying, how do you prove that that statement is true? How do you prove that in order for anything to exist, there must be a God? You don't get to reply with, well, it just feels like it. Well, if you think about it logically. Well, we know something can't come from nothing. Even if we absolutely knew that something can't come from nothing, that doesn't mean that it can only come from God or a thinking agent. Or how did you rule out a multiverse? How did you rule out, any number of other things? And so pushing back to say, okay, why is it that you are going to start by asserting, in order for anything to exist, there must be a God? Because that sells the whole farm right there. That's the very thing you're trying to prove. That's the thing that you and I don't exist. Or that's the thing that you and I, Seth, don't believe.
Well, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with a devout Christian, and I'm one of those atheists like so many others who know more about the history and the tenets and the verses in their religion than they do. And they will so often drift back into these two words: something happened. And I'm just like, we agree. Yes, we have a point of agreement. We have a shared foundation. Something happened. But when they say it, it's supposed to carry some sort of profundity. Well, something happened. Something took place. And I'm like, well, thanks for that. That and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. I don't know what else to do with that.
All right. We got 2 more theistic callers, and then we'll get on to the others. But is this Moshi in New York? Is that correct? Testing 1, 2, 3. Moshi? Do. I'm gonna put Moshi back in the queue. We'll have somebody check and make sure. And we'll take Travis now. Travis in Indiana, pronouns are he, him, has something that's actually relevant to what we were discussing. It's something related to the Kalam. So Travis, you're on with Seth and Matt.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Fair. How are you?
I'm all right. Matt, I just wanted to ask you a question or two and see and gather your thoughts on a certain topic. It was regarding the... sorry, did you say something?
I said okay.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask you, I've heard you multiple times, and you're free to clarify and correct me if I'm incorrect on this, that your common position that you hold is that when it comes to first causes and infinite regress models, is that you, feel free to correct me if this is wrong, you believe that there is a first cause of some kind, probably, but you don't know what that cause entails or is in terms of the nature of it?
I understand the appeal of the first cause. I don't know that it's necessarily the case.
So
hello? Evidently, we lost Travis. We'll try and get Travis back. We'll try Moshi again. Are you there in New York? I'll put you back in the queue, and then I'll take a caller I reasonably trust. William in Arkansas, pronouns are they, them. Thank you for holding for forever.
That's fine. Oh, those calls. Anyway, like I said before the show started in chat, I had a conspiracy theory I wanted to run by because, like, by definition, I guess conspiracy theory doesn't really have evidence that's any good, so it's irrational for me to have it, and yet I feel like I have some decent evidence. Does that make sense? First of all,
I guess it says here that you have a conspiracy theory you can't shake, and then it says U.S. government banned displaying conspiracy theories online to preemptively discredit whistleblowers.
No, I think the screener misunderstood what I meant.
Okay, good, because that doesn't make sense.
I feel that the U.S. government, after Edward Snowden released documents on the NSA and stuff, kind of saw the sheer ability for the internet to disseminate information very quickly, at least more so than they already knew. And so I kind of feel like they stand the flames of some conspiracy theorists in like on Reddit and other things to kind of almost build up like a wall of crazy is the best way I can describe it. That's not really accurate. So, but a wall of crazy to kind of.
Why should we conclude that the number of crazy conspiracy theories that are being spread online is in any way because the government is encouraging that?
Well, that is where I admit that this is an irrational point, because I have no evidence for that. But my sort of what made me believe it or made me see it, at least to some extent, is that it seemed like, and again, that is not real evidence of any kind, that these like the flat Earth conspiracies and like a lot of stuff dealing with the government specifically.
What does it deal
lot
with? What
more.
doesn't? Name something you can't tie to the government.
Oh well, in that case, you could tie anything to the government if you wanted to, yeah. But I'm referring to like how NASA being NASA is. Are they an organization of the government? I actually don't know. I don't think about it.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know for sure if they were private or not, actually, now that I think about it. But
I don't know why it makes any difference.
Like the NSA.
William, can I jump in?
Yes. Sure.
I just heard you say you know it's irrational and you have no evidence to believe it. Have you not answered your own concerns about this thing that you say you do or might or want to believe? If you know it's irrational and you know there's no evidence to back it up, have you not answered your own concern?
I should. That should be enough of an answer for me, but it's not, and I don't know why on this one.
Well, I'm lost. Well, is it an emotional thing? Do you have a feeling? Do you have a fear that there are agents, a clandestine organization in the Star Chamber using the agencies of the United States government to purposely obfuscate and send people off on rabbit trails to mislead the public? I mean, have you been watching a lot of X-Files? I like me some X-Files, right? But I
was an X-Files junkie.
If you know that there's no evidence to back it up, and you know you are not necessarily operating in an arena of rationality, you, in your brain, regardless of how you feel, you can have confidence that there's no good reason to buy any of this and a hell of a lot of good reason to reject it. Why would that not be enough?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know why that's not enough. It should be. You're absolutely right. It should be. But I can't seem to shake this one.
I'm curious.
Well, I'm not a mental health professional. I think there's psychology involved, and there may need to be a psychologist involved in one-on-one conversations in your own mind. It sounds like you are dealing with something that goes far beyond 2 + 2 = 4, or whether or not there is evidence to support a claim of vast government conspiracy. You know, this strikes me as almost phobia. Now, that's a conjecture, but it's a guess.
To be fair, what I am trying to... Sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, when you say you can't shake it, you're the only one that can say what that means. Like, I don't sit around, like, if I find out, I don't think I choose my beliefs. I don't think belief is the result of volition. I'm either convinced or I'm not convinced. But I can't think of a single time in my entire life where I've had a discussion and actually focused on something that I believe and came to the conclusion that it was irrational, that I didn't have sufficient evidence to believe it, and yet I still believed it. Like, once I recognize that it's irrational and I don't have evidence for it, I literally cannot continue to believe it.
This might be a thing on for my term specifically. I don't have anything that's direct, but it's built on like I feel like it's like counterintelligence is the term I've heard, but I don't think that's right either, as far as, because the idea essentially is to prevent other whistleblowers by having them look basically at the court of public opinion and almost
talking about false flags.
False flags. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
I'm wondering if it's not. I'm wondering if it's actually not the case that you believe this, but that you have your suspicions about it, and that it's an appealing idea, and that you You think it's possible rather than you think it's true. Because it's fine to have your
That actually does sound more right.
Then fine. I have really, really, really strong suspicions that there are in fact false flag operations. And I have these suspicions, in fact, because we know false flag operations have happened with different governments at different times to do things. And I also know that false flag operations in some cases are an absolute necessity to protect state secrets. The issue is whether or not this stuff happens. It's whether or not this is a massive thing that is happening across the board. I've met enough people on the internet to know that the government doesn't need to spend any effort at all to get them to tell you the bullshit they believe.
That's also fair.
All you need to do is open the tap and the shit comes out with the water. If you don't have a filter on that, you're getting it all. But to suspect that there are intentional false flags and things like that, not only is that warranted to believe and suspect that, just generally, it's almost it is absolutely the truth that it has happened. The problem is that even knowing that it has happened and that it will happen doesn't tell you whether any individual one is a false flag. That requires evidence. And that's why Alex Jones is being sued into oblivion in part by claiming the Sandy Hook stuff as a false flag operations, that these are, actors, crisis actors and things like that. He took his suspicions and applied them to a specific scenario and made claims that he can't back up. So I would recommend that for the ones that you're kind of hanging on to, or just the general sense, just go, yep, I'm pretty confident that stuff like this happens sometimes, but I also have a really good reason to think that there's just a load of irrational people out there that are happy to tell you every batshit crazy thing they believe. And I can't say what's the truth for any given situation until I get evidence for it.
That's fair. Maybe that's why I needed to call in. Most of my friends are in here. They kind of agreed with it, and I was just like, this is not helping necessarily. Of course, they don't. I have friends who don't trust the government under any circumstances for multiple reasons. But yes, I get the point there. But that actually is not not bad advice. I can word good.
Me too.
But no,
thanks for
calling. If only we could all word as good as Seth.
Appreciate you.
Thanks,
no
William.
problem. Y'all.
Is this, you think that's a riff on conspiracies have happened throughout history, so then we might be guilty of giving more weight to conspiracy theories? Hey, something happened in the past, and so maybe we have to give more weight or more attention, more credibility or potential credibility to a conspiracy theory because, well, people have, participated in covert operations to subvert this or that. I just watched that documentary about Alex Jones, by the way, on HBO. It's called The Truth versus Alex Jones. It's 2 hours. By the end of the documentary, Matt, I wanted to put my head through the sheetrock. That man, if souls existed, he has none.
Yeah.
The amount of heartlessness and cruelty and predation and sociopathy that I witness in that man, and I have long before I watched the documentary, but to see him gaining a following, profiting off of the grief of people who lost their children at Sandy Hook, and to see even now, I mean, I've come to the point where I think even after his assets are taken, even if he is bankrupted or whatever, he'll never stop. I am struck by also his amount of influence, because there are so many people who latch on to conspiracy theories. The more they are proven wrong, the more they must be right. The more the evidence is shown to them, the more the evidence must be manufactured. They seem in so many ways unreachable. I mean, the documentary said something along the lines of roughly a quarter of Americans believe that some or all of the information coming out of the Sandy Hook school massacre are fake, or that they're actors, or it's been fabricated. How does that even happen? I mean, a quarter of the citizens of this country have at least suspicions that some of it's made up. They're crisis actors. You know, living in the world of these rampant conspiracy theories where every batshit idea can catch fire on the internet, it's so disheartening. And I don't know what the solution is. How do you maybe pre-bunking as best we can? But I'm overwhelmed by it all.
I actually have a bunch of images and stuff saved of data where it's like, 40% of people believe X and 30% of people believe X, and broken down by demographics. The number of people who think that, the 2020 election was stolen or whatever else. The thing is, conspiracy theories exist because they take a bunch of facts and weave them together into a narrative that passes an initial sniff test because of the way it's framed. And that is, we know conspiracies have happened. We know people lie. We know people are irrational. We know any number of these things happen. I think the best example I've given is I'm a magician. My hands don't work as well as they used to, but I could absolutely sit down at a table in a card game with people and rob them blind by cheating, just with no significant effort on my part, absolutely cheat until I have all the money of everybody at the table. Most of the time. There may be, if I sit down with some of my magician friends, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to get away with stuff. The odds of getting a perfect bridge hand, I'm going to look it up. It's huge. And a perfect bridge hands, for those who don't know, are all 13 cards of one suit. And it's 1 in 22351974068953663683015599999.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. I don't even know how many. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 9 commas there, so we're 9 places out. But we do know that despite those incredible odds, it has reportedly happened more than once. But if we sat down at a table, I could absolutely deal you a perfect bridge hand. I could actually do it with very, very little effort if we start with a new deck. But boom, if you sit down and you have all 13 spades, is it reasonable for you to conclude that somebody cheated? It's not necessarily reasonable to conclude that that's what happened, but it's certainly reasonable to be suspicious that that's what happened. Problem is, those are bits of cardboard. They don't have memory. They don't have souls. They don't have magic, spirit magic, anything as far as we can tell. And they don't have memory. What if you got another perfect bridge hand the very next hand? What mathematicians look at is not just, we can't say for this instance whether or not somebody cheated, but we can say what the odds are that this was going to happen naturally. There are, more hands of bridge being dealt, in a short period of time than there are for quite a few other games, so we can calculate how likely it is. It's one thing to say, I suspect cheating. It's another thing to say, I am confident that there was cheating. And I would say if I just happened to be sitting there and got a perfect bridge hand, first of all, I'd say, what the hell am I doing playing bridge? Because I don't play bridge. But if I got it, I'd be like, that's really unusual. And if I got another one later on in the game, I would be pretty confident that somebody was probably cheating or showing off. So what? The odds that somebody's going to lie or set up a false flag to protect a government secret, I would say, is probably better than that you're going to get a perfect bridge hand. Because now you've got somebody doing something. As soon as you take chance out of it, if we shuffled and dealt and put in what an agent wants to do, that's how you build that narrative of, I think it's likely somebody cheated. It's fine to have those suspicions. And it's even fine to say, you know what? I can't prove it, but I'm always going to think that person cheated. For the rest of my life, I'm going to think I was cheated in that game. But that is really an admission on our part that it's more comforting for us to think there was an agent doing something than that something just incredibly unlikely happened back to back, because that makes life more comforting. And as soon as we start getting in the mindset of let's ascribe an agent to it, that's how you get to God's. Why is there a tornado? Why did this tornado hit your house and not mine?
I also think that there's a feeling of superiority that comes. I figured out what so many of the other sheeple have not. I think we have seen communities form around conspiracies. Look at Flat Earth. They get together and reinforce each other's belief, and the more they are refuted, the more they go back to their lair and say, aha, aren't we on to something while everybody else is so deceived? And if they were to come to a realization that the earth is a sphere, it's not just about changing their mind. It might potentially be about losing the in-group, the identity group that they have for so long been attached to, perhaps even come to love. Talk about a religious model. We talk about people who were involved in church and why so often we walk into the room with a set of bullet points and we show them evidence and the contradictory scriptures and the immorality in the Old and the New Testament. And we wonder, why aren't they changing their minds? Why are they panicking? Why is it fight or flight? Why do they retreat? Why am I leaving frustrated, etc.? But if you see it in terms of an identity and a community, we're not just saying, can you reevaluate the information? We are presenting them with the terrifying possibility that if they are wrong, they will lose the support structure they have long known. They may lose the friends they've cared about, the caretakers for their children, the people who have given them or met their needs in difficult times, and a sense of group identity. Then they drift and say, who am I? What do I think? I was there when I left the faith. Now that I'm not a Christian, who are my people? What are my values? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? What the hell's going on? It's a terrifying place. But, you know, there is security in going back into that conspiracy pod and believing, often for the sake of belief, and saying, you know, I'm smarter than everybody else. You can definitely see the human tendencies toward these types of things. And I think understanding these identity beliefs, feeling of superiority, the attraction of narrative. We love a good yarn. We love a good story. Understanding the psychology behind many of these beliefs, I think, may help us do a better job of, at the very least, empathizing with those who hold them.
Yep. I got a couple announcements. We got one final call, and then we're moving on to Super Chats. If you send in every Super Chat over $10 to be read, although we're hoping to get it all done by 8:30. So
You're fine,
given the
brother.
number of
You're
Super
good.
Chats that are in there, we'll make sure we don't send a bunch of them in with questions specifically for Seth later, but get them in now and we'll try to get to them. So tomorrow on the Transatlantic Call-In Show, it's Katy Montgomerie and Jose Caballero, both generally just hot-buttered awesome. That starts at 3:30 p.m., right? I'm so glad I actually looked at it, because I almost, thank you. Thank you, producer superior. I almost said 2, and then I just happened to notice right then. Also, there's no show on the line Friday currently, but that can change because who knows. Saturday, there's going to be a Cus I Wanna with Forrest Valkai and Roxanne. Sunday, on the Sunday show, it's going to be Eve Was Framed and Forrest Valkai at 2 p.m. And then the encore Sunday show after dark is going to be myself and Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. We'll be doing the 7 p.m. After dark Sunday show. Monday, Skeptalk will be Forrest Valkai and Morticia. Tuesday, Chewed Gum, Eve Was Framed, and Alyssa Ljub. Both of those are happening at 6 p.m. And next week on the Hang Up, Will Judy, the Texas director for American Atheists, is going to be joining me on the Hang Up. So first of all, I'm going to say a huge thank you. Catherine has been on hold for 2 hours and 24 minutes. I appreciate Catherine's patience more than she could imagine. I'm going to stop talking for a minute, and you can continue your introduction yourself and make your points so that you waited forever to get to.
Ooh, okay. Well, hi, my name's Catherine. I've been following both of you for quite a while, and I've been on a steady stream of learning more about atheism. And with that, looking in politics, my statement was that more and more women's rights are being stripped, and that it's the biggest problem in government, possibly America, possibly the world, if you look at it in certain ways, and that the majority of the reason is because of theocracy.
Which rights specifically are annoying you the most?
The most? I would say body autonomy is the biggest one, because when you have a woman's rights, her physical rights taken away from her, you have the clinics and the hospitals and the doctors that would have supported those services taken away, then you're also stripping away rights from other minorities like trans groups or, like Planned Parenthood. And even with the sordid history that Planned Parenthood had, that it became a center where you could go get help and services, whether you were a woman, whether you were a girl, whether you were trans, whether you were gay, anything, that once they sat there and started closing the clinics with the excuse of, we can't perform abortion anymore, so we have to close these clinics, then you take away the health care for all of the other minority groups.
Yeah.
Catherine, have you noticed that so many of the attempts to strip women of their autonomy and this decision, because #baby killing or whatever, when it comes to reproductive choice, have you noticed that no one's asking the larger question? Well, there are two major questions, I think. First of all, we see that, what's the statistic? 30 plus or maybe even higher % of fertilized eggs are ejected out of a woman's body through menses before they ever make it to a live birth, which would make the intelligent designer the most prolific abortion doctor in all of human history. That's not intelligent design. God is an abortionist. But the second question is, if it's such an important thing, why is Jesus not coming down and intervening one-on-one? Why would Jesus not rescue the baby out of the womb and take it straight to heaven, or have a one-on-one conversation with the pregnant mother and intervene directly? Why wouldn't a benevolent deity so concerned about the fetus leave it in the hands of the theocrats, often white evangelical males, who are arguing in the halls of local, state, and federal governments? To me, it just seems crazy when you frame it that way.
Well, it equals into the point of, you've got men who will say that they're pro-choice and who say, well, we need to get rid of abortion because every egg is a potential person. And they're like, no. There's a difference, because women, as soon as they start hitting that time in their life, they're laying eggs on a regular basis. So are these men saying that women are just natural born killers? Because how dare we sit there and ovulate? How dare we not stay constantly pregnant? I mean, that's what an Orthodox God would sit there and say. Women need to be pregnant all the time. We need to have babies all the time. Why do we need to have those babies? so that they can suffer and they can die and become part of God's nice little army that he's going to have way up in the sky for all the delusional people who want to believe that. But it does.
Well,
it turns women into the most hated people in the world.
My perspective is a little bit different, Catherine. I came out of a very devout anti-abortion culture, but turn your radio down for me if you would, or your monitor. Our perspective was one of sincere desire to protect life. When I was anti-abortion, I wasn't attacking women. I wasn't trying in my mind to diminish women. I didn't want to see The Handmaid's Tale, etc. Although, I wasn't thinking as much about the result. My desire, though, was not to silence or imprison or suppress. I was focused on the baby. And we can't ignore that specific shade of the anti-abortion movement. Many of these people are simply operating from a perspective that is problematic, but they're operating not because they hate women, but because they are trying to protect what they have been taught is a human life, maybe even a human soul. And so I think there are a lot of shades to the motivations against reproductive choice. I'm not saying that we don't see an insidious result from those, and I don't think it shouldn't be violently opposed, if you'll forgive the language there. But we can be a little more charitable with some people. I think they're not pro-life in their word because they hate women. They have that position because they genuinely think babies are dying and they want to try to prevent that.
Right. And I try my best to go along with that. I have discussions with the pro-life men and women, and we have the discussion of why are you protecting the child? And is the child more important than the mother? And what's going to be done with the child once the child is born? And, the society, the economic part of that really changes when you start talking to a person who is so set upon the baby being the most important part of it that they don't look at not just the woman's rights, but her health. I mean, once a woman gets pregnant, every time she gets pregnant and every time she gives birth, her body is literally used to make that baby. And every time that happens, a woman goes through many, many changes and she becomes weaker physically and sometimes mentally. And it's the fact that we don't have the services set up to support that. So if you have a child in Tennessee at 13 who was forced to bear a baby because her mother couldn't afford to get her up to Chicago after she was raped, that child is going to suffer for that. She is going to go through all of these conditions and none of the horrible things comes into play. You've got so many people that are all wrapped up in that baby. And I understand because I'm a parent. But everyone is so wrapped up in that baby and how beautiful that baby is. But they don't look at the other effects. They don't look at how many things are going to go wrong in that situation for that mother, possibly for the baby, possibly for the whole family, because they don't have any of the health or social services set up.
I totally hear and I totally agree. There's one other shade to that I want to throw in. I know we're on the clock and I don't want to co-opt Matt's show here, but reproductive education doesn't exist in most Christian cultures. So when I was talking, whenever someone goes, Trump's a great example. Was he talking about post-birth abortion recently? There was a politician who was talking about post 9 months after the baby's released, the doctors will have a powwow and decide whether to murder the child. I mean, this is the conversation. And this was what we were taught, that those liberals did not respect life. and babies were being aborted in the 8th month, and all of these horror stories. We didn't understand how the reproductive system worked. We didn't have our models for the body were ones where God owned it in the first place. And so we were subjected to all kinds, talk about conspiracy theories, and we bought it because we believed it was a holy war and they were going after the most vulnerable. Who's more vulnerable than the unborn? And, there's a pod. There are pods of people who are indoctrinated or fed misinformation or maybe just kept in the dark about how the whole system works. And I totally feel your frustration because those moments of ignorance, those cultures of disinformation, they have real world consequences and they cause a tremendous amount of suffering and suppression out there. And I think your concerns are well articulated. I'm so glad you called in with them.
Thank you.
Oh, I was afraid I bored you to death, Catherine. I tend to be long-winded,
Yeah, there was that pause.
Yeah, okay.
I refuse to intentionally interrupt either one of you.
Oh, stop. Well, I tend to be a little bit verbose, and no one needs me to validate what you just said, but I just wanted to sort of affirm and encourage, hey, thank you, because there certainly is a submission model in much of the church. We're seeing it less in moderated church, in more progressive humanist-based churches. And yes, there are more humanist Christians out there. But the idea is it's God, the man, woman, children. And so women do have to submit. And some would use that model to excuse why men are making decisions about what women can do with their bodies. And it is real. It does still happen. And it has to be acknowledged. So.
Now, that's going in the bad meme bucket. One of the worst memes ever is this: men don't get a say. Men should keep women's bodies shouldn't be discussed. No. But that's where the memes go, and I'm like, no.
Okay, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
No, I hear that. Like a Christian can sound off on Islam, or white people can't speak to racial issues. I think we're all part of the human condition.
It's worse than that. Who do you want making laws about women's body? Me or Marjorie Taylor Greene? So let's not be dumb about throwing our allies under the bus, because me and Marjorie Taylor Greene are not going to agree.
Okay.
But
Catherine,
I got to get on.
Really
I got to get on the super chat.
I know I have to go.
Catherine, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thanks so much. I got to move on to super chats, but yes, I'll just say yes. You guys should listen to Catherine. I'll just. We need some kind of symbol that's like, spectacle, testicle, wallet, and watch that the Catholics do. I'll just say amen, because I don't think Christians should have, or anybody should have ownership of that word, which just means assent. We're going to try and get through these super chats as quickly as we can. 999 from Greg Markowski. Going to see Reverend Peyton tonight. Not a real reverend, but a fantastic slide guitar hill country blues player. I'll watch tomorrow. Hate to miss Seth. Well, you won't. If you watch tomorrow, you won't miss Seth. Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate it. You're up now. We're going to
my reading?
Sure.
$10 from Dade. Is it Dade Murphy? Matt, you're a goddamn goat. The greatest of all time, big homie. I like that. Put that on a business card, Matt.
The beard makes you look more like a goat, like I'm a billy goat. So there we go. $10 from PhD Tony. Chuck claims that no atheist is moved by religious arguments, yet he was an atheist and was convinced by religious arguments. I'm not convinced that he was actually convinced by religious arguments, because he pointed out that it was a personal experience of his. That is something we're going to end up doing. I might end up doing a video on that next week, just on personal experience. But
man, did you feel like he was trying to build credibility? It almost sounded like one of those apologists who said, I was an atheist, but I realized it takes too much faith to be an atheist. I caught a little bit of that when he was speaking. So
Chuck's called several times. Chuck's called several times in the past, and Chuck knows what I think of him.
It seems to be like a way of establishing some sort of equity or credibility. Well, I was an atheist, so now I have extra. I bring extra gravitas to the point I'm about to make. $10 from Paul. I'm going to say is it Meixner? MEI makes me think it's German. I am the very model of a modern major general. I've information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the fights historical from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical.
And that there's a follow-up. There's a follow-up from Paul. Matt said, do you both know Les Miserables well enough that if I brought up enough super chats, I could get you to perform the confrontation? No, I've never seen Les Mis. I do know.
10 years.
Was the I am the very model of modern major general. Is that HMS Pinafore? It's Gilbert and Sullivan.
I don't know.
I don't remember which
It's
one.
been forever since I've seen Les Mis on the stage. Wow.
I never have, but I know it roughly. I know lots of things that I haven't actually seen. That's why I like to, say, hey, I knew a lot about Australia before I ever went there. I didn't need to go to Australia to know that Australia existed, but I'm damn glad we went.
Yeah. Yep. Is this me or you?
I think it's you.
$10 from Storm Chaser Noah. Hola, amigos. Showed my buddy Seth's blood cult speech. Pretty sure he's on his way out the door of Christianity. Which of your books should I read first? The speech that I did, I guess it was last year or the year before. They're all a blur, but it's called Blood Cult. You can YouTube it, my name and the word blood cult. But it speaks to how normalized blood messaging has become in the mainstream Christian church, so much so that people don't even realize how freaking creepy it is. Beyond communion, symbolically drinking blood, or if you're a Catholic, thinking it's actually Jesus's flesh and blood, but singing, are you washed in the blood? We're singing about being washed in blood, covered by the blood. There's power in the blood. It's an examination of how we don't even think about it, but if we heard it in another religion, in another context, it would totally wig us out. So it's a pretty interesting speech. My books, look, I don't care. It really depends on what you want, what you're trying to get out of it. Deconverted is my story out of fundamentalism. Sacred Cows is kind of a romp around the world. Fox News Christian sort of dismantles the right-wing media culture. And Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot gets into how very smart people can end up saying and doing very dumb things, right? It's funny how sometimes we outsmart ourselves, and this is very common, especially in the church, I think. You find ways to rationalize the irrational. Where does that come from? And so I sort of peel back the curtain. But I mean, I don't, buy a real author's book, man. But thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Thank you, Noah.
Start with with Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot, and then buy the rest of them. Read all of them right afterwards. Maybe by the time you get done with all, I'm going to give you my Visa card number, man.
I'm going to Venmo you a commission for that pitch. Thank you. Thanks for that.
$20 from Whiskey Spirit Guide. I can listen to Seth all day long. No, you can't, because he won't talk all day long. He goes and takes naps and stuff. I don't though. I talk all day. Your voice is warm and comforting like homemade biscuits and gravy. Matt, every day I grow more jealous of your beard. Mine will catch up someday. You're gay, homie. Jimmy, go fuck yourself. And some letters for Seth. Yeah, we don't have Seth's letters, but well, we'll tell you something before we close out here. There may be some letters coming for Seth. We'll have to work on letters for Seth.
$10. This is Paul. Please make sure I'm saying your name correctly, Paul. Matt Andrews. At last we see each other plain. Monsieur le Mayor, you'll wear a different chain. Before you say another word, Matt, before you chain me up like a slave again, listen to me. Jesus Christ, what am I reading? Is this more Les Mis that I'm reading?
It is.
Okay.
It
All
is.
Right, thank you. I'm sure I screwed up Monsieur. I'm terrible at French. Forgive me. Redneck French.
So
what that was.
I'm gonna have to get producer confirmation here in just a second for something, but there is a follow-up from Paul as well, which I'll do. $10 for Paul Meixner as well. And Paul, you need to send in at least 2 or 3 more of these in $10 increments to let us know if we pronounced your name correctly and what your favorite food is. I'm incredibly grateful, but I'm not above prodding, Paul. Seth, there's something I must do. This woman leaves behind a suffering child. There's none but me who can intercede. In mercy's name, 3 days are all I need. Then I'll return. I pledge my word.
He's good.
I have no idea if that's remotely right, but I figured I had a little flavor.
Matt's method too. He's very much in the character. Then I'll return. You must think me mad. I've
wait. He's given us specific lines.
Oh shit. Then I'll return.
You must think me mad. I've Dillahunted you across the years. Men like you can never change. A man such as you.
You're so much better at this than I am. Wow.
Well, I read children's stories in all kinds of voices.
All right. $10 from Jeff Cochran. The never-ending debate of unfalsifiable claims is itself a sort of survivorship bias. Also, for your consideration, rename the problem of gratuitous suffering evil the problem of diarrhea.
The problem of diarrhea.
Lost.
Yeah, it's gratuitous or unnecessary suffering evil. Yeah.
I'm not tracking. I'm sure it's my fault too.
So there is, I'm not a fan of the problem of evil as an argument against the existence of a God, because as somebody who is a fundamentalist Southern Baptist, if somebody came to me and tried to present some version of the God of evil, it would have had a problem of evil that would have had zero impact on me, because man sinned and brought sin and death into the world. And, God never said that he made his creation perfect, just that it was good. And we brought about the fall and all these other things. And so that's an explanation. And so you get rid of all that, and then you're left with, yes, but why hurricanes or whatever else? And at no point does the Bible say that the earth was perfect. So now you're in a discussion about, can a perfect being, God, create something that's imperfect? And my view on that has always been, of course. How could you possibly view something as perfect if it's not capable of doing something that is also imperfect? I can play dumber than I am. I can play chess at a lower rating. I can essentially kind of handicap myself. I don't need to, because I'm pretty bad right now, but I could do it. And so that didn't hit. The problem of excessive, unnecessary, gratuitous suffering, all those are ones where, yeah, but couldn't God have made a world that accomplishes all the things that God wants to accomplish without giving infants spina bifida? Just pick one. Giving cancer to infants. And the answer is an obvious yes, and that has strong appeal to many people and helps many people leave or start the path of leaving their religion. But I don't find it to be a particularly compelling argument against the existence of God. It's just the argument against it. It's a reasonably good argument against some aspects of the God characters that people want to impose.
I kind of mean, if you frame it as the problem of needless suffering, Loftus has that book, came out a few years ago, The God of Horrendous Suffering, which is sort of an Epicurean look at, if he's all good or all powerful, etc. I think that has a lot of utility, whether or not that God would be competent and worthy or even able. I think those are germane to conversation. And I think that can be a powerful refutation to the idea that a perfect God would design and implement such an imperfect plan that caused so much pain and agony and chaos throughout history. You're not impressed by that as much, or?
It would not have moved me at all when I was a believer.
But whether or not it moved you, it still remains a good point, is what I'm saying, right?
Not against the existence of a God, but against the existence of a particular view about God.
The Christian God?
No, there's no such thing as the Christian God. There's thousands of denominations, and they all have different views. The Methodists down the street from my Southern Baptist church and the Pentecostals across the street, we all had different answers to questions like this.
Oh, Jesus. Now we're talking about a whole other show. You mean you don't hold to the biblical Yahweh, Jesus, the triune, right? God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the deities that are written about in the foundational text of most of Christianity?
Yes. But that doesn't tell you that your perception of what you see as unnecessary suffering is actually unnecessary suffering from the perspective of a God that knows everything. Because maybe the only way to teach someone a particular lesson is for there to be the capacity for that suffering. I don't know.
I got to think about this one.
I got 8 super chats left. We've hit over the 8:30
it's
mark.
my fault. No, you're fine. Take your time.
I'm just saying, I want to
me.
let you know that if you needed to go, I can wrap them up.
No, I'm good.
Not,
I'm good. I'm in.
$10 for Susie Dawson. I contacted RFR and will be getting a call soon to train to be a volunteer on the helpline. I'm excited to be a part of such a great organization that helps others heal. I can't be more excited. Thank you for letting me know, Susie. We talked about this before when I had Daryl Ray on, getting more volunteers for RFR.
$9.99 from Lane Harrison. How do you recommend debating someone whose reason for believing in the Bible is the Dead Sea Scrolls? What source do you recommend to educate myself on the topic? What historian would be the best resource on the Dead Sea Scroll? Well, first of all, I'm not convinced that someone who is using the Dead Sea Scrolls to defend Christianity is going to be reached through debate. You may be setting yourself up for frustration. I'm not saying it shouldn't be countered, but all scripture no scripture actually has been properly sourced. So you've got this larger umbrella problem that's really, I think, more overwhelming than the scrolls themselves. But if you had to engage, I'm trying to think of who a great historian might be. Matt may know more on this than I do.
Well, first of all, any Christian that says they believe in the Bible based on the Dead Sea Scrolls is a liar, because there's not a single page from the New Testament that exists in the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're only Old Testament stuff, and that's not going to get you to Christianity. That's going to get you to Judaism.
I can't even think of when the scrolls were dated. I'm just drawing a total blank. It's been a long time since we've had those discussions.
2 to 300 CE for the Qumran stuff. I'd recommend, just for fun, something related to this topic, Bart Ehrman's book, Lost Christianities. As soon as I can get it out of here, I actually have a copy right here. It's my favorite of all of Bart's books. It's The Battle for Scriptures and Faiths We Never Knew. And that'll go through things within Christendom and Judaism, books that were considered canonical or thought that they should have been considered canonical and weren't. They were excluded. Different views on Christianity, whether or not Jesus was all God, all man, whether or not the Trinity, which was basically invented in 325 CE, not BCE. And I think 200-300 BCE was the date I was given for the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it might be later. It might be 150 or so. I don't.
You'll be correct.
I can't do this
in
in super chats.
There is no doubt. I'm just struck by the whole idea that men had to get together and argue about and then vote on what God's true word was. It just blows my mind. Like, why wasn't this canonized? And why wasn't that book put in? And why did someone else put it in? And who's the blasphemer here? It's just it's a circus out there.
That is probably Council of Nicaea and stuff. And where they were fighting about Arians and everything else. Those are the first religious penis measuring competitions of, I've got more religious clout than you. I know more about God, likes me more. And then they get together and vote. And this is how the Shepherd of Hermas isn't in the Bible. And Revelation of John is in the Bible, despite the fact that nobody liked it. And then the Apocalypse of Peter is not in the Bible. It's nuts, but those are my recommendations.
$20 from Koi Duri. The truth is out there. Trust no one. There's an X-Files reference. I didn't watch the relaunch of X-Files, which came out, I guess, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Did you try it out? Was it any good? Anybody?
Nope, didn't watch it.
No? Okay. All right. Never mind.
I watched all the old ones and even have first printings of the first X-Files comic books that they came out with as well. I was a big fan. I have film cells from X-Files. I was a huge X-Files fan.
Wow.
But when I was done with it, I was done with it. $10 from Monkey at Typewriter. The refusal to address a question asked continues to boggle me. If Seth's energy is younger, it might be because Matt's done this for 2 decades. Like Obama's before and after photos from the White House. You're gay, homie. Thanks, Monkey. You are probably correct. They have worn me down. But I will say, I defy anybody. I keep seeing, here's a meme I keep seeing, a picture of Wilford Brimley at 40 next to Paul Rudd at 40. And Wilford Brimley looks 25 years older than Paul Rudd when they're both, like at 40 or whatever else. Go back to the 70s and 80s and find people who are 55 and 56 and put them up in a side-by-side shot against me and Seth. We'll beat the fuck out of both of them.
I like it. Wow, I can't pronounce this. Chrysolazar Razkalazar. You did this to me on purpose. You wanted to see me fumble. Well, you have succeeded.
I hadn't even read it yet, but as long as you think I did it to you on purpose, I'll go with it. Read it, damn
Huge thanks to you. Huge thanks for all you guys do. What a treat. Just saw Seth on Paulogia with Shannon. No, you saw Paulogia and Shannon on my show. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And now with Matt, have I died and gone to heaven?
Probably not.
That shows
but
you how
see
much
me and Arden on Paulogia and Shannon's thing. We helped with a fundraiser for MS, and we reviewed some Christians reviewing Endgame.
Those two are fun to get in the same room. They have such good chemistry. They both come at specific angles or topics with various different angles. And they play well off each other. When I had them on the show last week, it was mostly I just tee them up and say, what do you think? And then I sat back and watched them go. And we probably could have doubled that show length easily. Wonderful activists and good people out there. So
it's always a lot to get me and Shannon in the same show. And I love it every time. Like Shannon, don't tell her, and I hope she's not watching right now, but genuinely, she's one of my, if I had like single handful people I want to host a show with, Shannon's on that list for sure.
Yeah, she doesn't salt her watermelon, which is a problem. We had this conversation because watermelon.
I go both ways on the watermelon.
But that's a whole other show conversation.
Yeah.
$20.
A whole other show too.
Kathleen Moncrief, a super chat for a super show, $20 or 20 Canadian rather. Thank you so much.
That's right. It's not real money.
Yeah. It's prettier than
But
our
thanks
money.
for that not real money, Kathleen. And it's so good to see you again. $10 for Paul Meixner. Meixner?
That's how you pronounce it. Meixner.
Meixner.
Thank you, Arden.
See?
Well, I got the long I correct. I got the long I correct with the German spelling. Thank you very much.
Meixner, Reuben Sandwich, and you couldn't, and you thought you couldn't perform Les Mis.
Wow.
I didn't. Well, I don't know. Thank you
You
so
were the
much,
accidental. You were the accidental artist performer. They set us up.
The accidental artisan.
$5 from Pod Dammit. In the eyes of a small child, mother is God. The quote from Thackeray. It is interesting to see children as little trust machines, and how the same people who taught us to tie our shoes and to keep us away from danger and fed our mouths and met our needs and whatnot are the same people who do become a kind of, especially at a certain age, kind of infallible. Well, adults know things, and for better and worse, that sets children up often for to be taught what to think instead of how to think. But it's an interesting quote. Thanks for sharing it. Much appreciated.
All right. And the final super chat, assuming nobody else sends another one in, and you know what? I'm not going to tell you guys not to, but we got to get done. $5 from LHRPG official. Thank you so much, Matt. I called in for advice a while back, and after taking your advice, my friend and I have a much better relationship. That makes me feel really good because, I've got advice. I constantly warn people that they get what they pay for. In this case, I guess you just paid $5 for advice, so you got $5 worth of advice, but I'm glad it was useful. On that note, first of all, huge thank you to Arden for producing tonight's show. I don't know who our call screener was. Arden can say.
The apostate Paul. Thank you so much, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to all of our moderators for doing that. Quick announcements. Because there were some problems with the demonetization here on YouTube on occasion, we've been pushing people to support at patreon.com/calltheline. And you guys have stepped up, and it's been wonderful. Because of that, Jimmy's announcing new things, including new podcasts, new special content there as well. So you might want to go to patreon.com /call the line to find more information. There's a number of different tiers there. There's some stuff that's going to be coming up where you can, you'll get free access to it at some point, even if you're not a paid, or I think there's like a $3 tier to $5 tier. Don't quote me, whatever it is. There's some stuff that you'll get first access to. Jimmy's got an announcement up about that. But also you can go to linemerch.com, and I'll bet you the wonderful and talented and beautiful Arden Hart has a graphic that she's probably put up 3 times during the show, and I only saw it once or twice.
I have not.
But she's getting ready to yell at me right now because she's queued for the end. Oh, no, there it is.
This is the old graphic, too. There's other stuff up on the website. This is just the one that I happen to have on the file ready to go.
There's one I saw that was in the show starting soon thing that popped up.
Yes, but it'll mute you if I put that on because I have.
Well, let's not mute me. How dare we mute me after the show starts? Anyway, last little announcements there. You can go to QAnaline.com. Yes, QAnaline.com is a website for this, and you can go there if you want to apply to be on NBOSS or one of the other debating shows that's come up. And the last thing that I have to announce is that it was fun that somebody mentioned, they've got the YGH or Your Gay Home. Oh my gosh, there's 3 more super chats. Why don't I do those and then I'll make that last announcement. So $10 from Perch Dragon. Thank you both for your talk that we hosted in 2019 in Phoenix. Oh my gosh, it was so awesome. I had so much fun there. Always a pleasure to hear your thoughts. We at the Humanist Society of Greater Phoenix are hoping for a reprise. A large event in 2025. Count me in.
Yeah, I'm in. Call us. You have your people, call our people. Coy just sent a big happy face, and don't we all need more of that in our lives? Thanks for the $10.
And a final $10 from Johnny O. Thoughts on the Eurovision Song Contest? I know it's not popular with Americans. I didn't even know it existed till a couple years ago, but it's huge in a lot of the world. Grand finale on May 11th. I've never watched an episode. I've seen clips of it. I have no thoughts on this year's contest. Seth, are you keeping up with it?
I have no idea what we're talking about. I'm totally lost. I can be of no assistance. Sorry.
My apologies, Johnny, but that's the best we're going to do. And the final announcement for today is that in much the same way that we have the YGH or Your Gay Homie, for me and the Go Fuck Yourself, Jimmy, for Jimmy, we may need to look at getting some letters for Seth because Seth is going to be joining the line as one of the regular scheduled Sunday show hosts is my understanding. And so now we've got to come up with something mean to say to Seth and make initials out of it and sell you t-shirts of it.
You folks must just be desperate. I mean, I'm just saying. Now, for those who are wondering, I continue my work at the Thinking Atheist. Nothing there changes, but Jimmy had reached out and said that and asked if I would be interested in participating. And I said, as long as travel, I'm on the road a lot this year. SethAndrews.com/events to see where I'm going to be all around the country, LA and going to Kentucky and going to Sarnia, Toronto, Dallas, Houston, etc. But if I'm not on the road, I'm honored to be asked. And if I can help serve the show as host, co-host, scab, fill-in host, whatever, I'm delighted to be here. I hope everybody enjoys it. I hope I have something to contribute that's worth having here. So, yeah, thank you.
There you go. Chat's already going nuts with the smiley announcement. I am too. I'm going to be busy with more and more reptile stuff, which means I'm going to be doing late shows for Sunday Show After Dark for a little bit. But when I'm not here, I'll be on the Sunday show. But for right now, don't forget to tune in on Tuesdays to Chewed Gum with Eve and Alyssa. But tomorrow, it's Katy and Josie on the Transatlantic Call-In Show at a special time, 3:30 p.m. Central. So, 5 hours and 15 minutes before now, tomorrow. On that note, take care of yourself. Take care of each other when you can. We look forward to seeing you next time. I'll be back next week on The Hang Up, but there's way more cool shows that you can watch between now and then. Thanks, Seth.
See you later.